Chapter 3240. These bugs were all different. If there was one that was the same, it would be the people in the cabin. They had the appearance of a person but no gender characteristics. A mountain-like monster bug with many hands was pulling the ship. Li Wen walked to the deck and looked at the endless void. He stood side by side with Ning Shu and said, "I won't ask why you left. It's really dangerous for you to explore the void alone. There are all kinds of things in the void, all kinds of dangers, and all kinds of creatures that have never been heard of before." Ning Shu asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm going anywhere and strolling around. If there's a plane, these bugs will start devouring it." Ning Shu was a little surprised. "Don't you have a place to live?" "There are, but they're all temporary places to stay. It doesn't matter if there's one or not." Ning Shu asked, "Then there are many places with planes?" "That's right. After a wheat field is finished, you'll go to the next one." "How are planes born?" Ning Shu asked. "Are they all born from the Sea of Laws?" Li Wen shook his head. "There are different ways of birth. Some are worlds born from the Sea of Laws, and some are not. Have you seen endless towering trees?" Ning Shu shook his head. "No. Is this a world?" "Yes, it's a world. This is what these bugs like to eat the most." Ning Shu said, "Oh, why?" "Because no one organizes a defense. This kind of place where people can take whatever they want is the most convenient for bugs. What if there's a defense? Think of the plane we were born in." Ning Shu asked again. "Then it will definitely take a lot of effort to take it down. If they can't get any benefits, they will still retreat." Ning Shu rubbed his chin and thought. What's the meaning of these bugs being born? Since they existed, there must be something that counters each other. So the meaning of these bugs being born is to eat planes? The meaning of being born is to eat these planes. Why don't you think in another direction? Why don't you treat these planes as crops and these bugs as reapers? When the time comes, it's time to harvest. Ning Shu, I can't imagine. What's the point of harvesting? Ning Shu asked. Li Wen thought for a moment and said, maybe it's to reduce the burden of the place where the plane was born. There's life and there's death. If you die, you can be reborn. Ning Shu, it's a bit profound, I don't understand. If you treat these planes as burdens or parasites, then these bugs eating the parasites is a benefit. Ning Shu, M. According to what you said, is it wrong for someone to guard a plane? Planes were actually parasites. This analogy really made Ning Shu feel like his worldview had collapsed. He originally thought that he was experienced and knowledgeable, but this kind of situation was something that he hadn't expected. Of course, I can't say that. I can only say that the existence of the plane has more or less an influence. I can't say that the guardian is wrong. The plane is destined to die. These protectors can be considered doctors. They should help treat it. They can't possibly refuse to see a doctor when they know they're going to die, right? And the birth plane is the Sea of Law. The mission of the World Tree is to give birth to planes until they die. Some people are born, and some people are destroyed. There's no right or wrong. Ning Shu nodded. He couldn't say that the existence of hospitals was wrong. No one was willing to walk towards death. Do you see that place? Li Wen pointed ahead. There was a huge tree with no end in sight. The tree seemed to have grown out of thin air. It was so huge that no one knew where it extended to. Is it a plane? Ning Shu saw that these bugs were beginning to become irritable. Obviously, this tree was full of temptation to these bugs. Pa! As soon as the finger snapped, these bugs flew over. These bugs were smaller than ants in front of the tree. They were as small as fine sand, but these fine sand quickly covered the tree. Sha sha. Like silkworms nibbling on mulberry leaves, the tree was eaten just like that. The tree shook its body in pain. Obviously, this tree had no one guarding it. In the face of such an attack, it could only bear the pain and walk towards death. Although it swayed its branches and even began to self-destruct, it could only hurt some of the bugs. More bugs were nibbling away at its body. As long as these bugs didn't even appear, the people in the cabin would be fine. The tree was about to be devoured clean. Ning Shu had goosebumps all over his body. He had trypophobia. Now that he saw the bugs densely covering the tree like sand, he felt uncomfortable. The trunk and leaves of this tree were all eaten. There was a green thing in the middle of the tree. These bugs carried the green tree heart to the front of the boat and respectfully presented it. The people in the cabin stretched out countless tentacles and pulled the tree heart into the cabin. It was green, especially cool, and especially forgiving. From afar, one could feel a surge of power. It was strong, gentle, and gave birth to all things. This tree heart was not big. It had an irregular shape. Ning Shu asked, "What is this?" "It's this power that can give birth to planes, give birth to living beings, a sea of law, the foundation of a world tree." Ning Shu nodded. "Is it the Sea of Law stone?" Ning Shu remembered that he seemed to have the Sea of Law stone, but he didn't bring it with him. However, he wanted to take the important thing. The stone was probably in some corner. She had forgotten. Li Wen asked, "What is that?" Ning Shu said, "How should I explain it? Anyway, it's something in the Sea of Law." Li Wen shook his head. "It shouldn't be. If the Sea of Law doesn't have a power core, it will directly wither and collapse. The stone you're talking about is not it." Ning Shu guessed that it was not. After all, the organization would not casually give such an important thing to the mission enforcers. As for the use of that thing, Ning Shu did not know. Anyway, it was left in a corner to collect dust. She had left the organization, and the things in the system space had probably been taken away by the organization. Ning Shu heard crunching sounds in the cabin and asked, "They just gnawed on it like that? Otherwise, do they have to cook it?" Brother, you're getting more and more humorous," Ning Shu said. "Can you swallow this thing?" They were eating inside, and Li Wen was standing outside. He felt a little awkward. Li Wen shook his head. "Without that stomach, I can't digest it. The racial advantage can't be compared." Ning Shu looked at the cabin with some envy. A powerful force that gave birth to a plane. The silver-haired man said that her world tree was missing something. Was it this? Chapter 3241. Human bodies were fragile, and their lifespans were not long. The time they lived was not even as long as the time others slept. Although humans had unlimited creativity, their foundation was quite weak. It was a little difficult to catch up with these gifted existences in terms of strength. Li Wen said, "There's nowhere else to go other than following. Do we return to the plane?" That was true. After seeing so much, he was still at ease in a plane. Obviously, a plane was not enough for Li Wen to play with. It might not even be able to withstand Li Wen's strength. Ning Shu could only feel that Li Wen was quite strong now, but he did not know what he was cultivating. He just did not know if his soul was tough. After traveling to so many places, he must have obtained a lot of good things. Now, the team set off toward the endless void and encountered all kinds of planes. Some planes grew on trees, some were seas, and some were like dust floating everywhere. Some core forces were protected. Of course, if these bugs wanted to eat the planes or seize the core forces, they would definitely be stopped. Ning Shu stood on the deck and saw waves after waves of water surging past. Although there were people stopping them, the defense line would soon be unable to hold on. Ning Shu remembered that he had once been a member of the team that stopped these bugs. It was really hard to fight. The other party was big and had strong defense. Once they could not hold on, the planes behind them would all be devoured. At that time, he thought that these bugs would eat the planes, but if they really broke through, these bugs would not hesitate to seize the power in the Sea of Law. It was fine if there were people guarding such power. In fact, the people living in the planes knew nothing about the outside world, let alone what kind of situation they were facing. They brushed past death and annihilation, but it was obvious that this wave of protection was not very good. It was quickly broken through, like a flood breaking through a dam, unstoppable. These bugs pounced on the planes and devoured them. Everyone was in despair, but the situation was already over and there was no way to reverse it. The locusts swallowed all the planes and dug away the core forces. This kind of thing was, of course, offered to the leaders in the cabin. None of the bugs dared to swallow this power, even though this power was full of power for the little bugs. Ning Shu turned to look at Li Wen. The light from the plane's explosion illuminated her face, making her look extremely solemn. He felt Ning Shu's gaze and turned to look at her. Look, even the world is so fragile. Ning Shu also looked at the plane that was wailing and collapsing. It is indeed very fragile. Perhaps to the living beings in the planes, the world was the sturdiest nest, but to the insects, these planes were like crispy corners. They were crunchy and tasted like chicken. Perhaps insects were the ones at the top of the food chain. Ning Shu remembered that the organization said that a war like this would break out every 3,000 years to defend against these insects. In fact, these insects were drifting with the flow. Even if they passed by, they might not be able to return. Could it be that the void was round and he could walk back? The void should not be so small. Moreover, it would take a long time to be born. For example, the Sea of Laws had to be formed first. Then, the Sea of Laws would slowly form the plane. It would take some time for the plane to form a living world. The growth and development could not keep up with the speed of the insects devouring. Ning Shu asked, other than these insects, are there any others? There should be others. Anyway, they come in waves. Sometimes, some of them are left alone and form other teams, Li Wen said. Oh, Ning Shu replied. She felt a little bitter. Perhaps they would have to face wave after wave of insects. These insects had big appetites and were big. It was not easy to fill them up. Li Wen said, although they have the heart to protect, they don't have the strength to protect. It's better to be ignorant and be destroyed. Sometimes, ignorance was bliss. Ning Shu asked, what if we can't break through? Will we negotiate? These insects will not be satisfied if they don't get something wherever they go. As long as their appetites are filled, it will be fine, Li Wen said indifferently. The insects did not want to waste their strength for nothing. Ning Shu nodded and stood side by side with Li Wen on the deck. They watched as the planes were devoured one by one. They did not know what to say. They said that the insects were cruel and heartless. To them, it was natural that they were born to eat such things. I want to eat. I want to eat. You love life so much. Can you bear to watch us starve to death? In short, this was an unsolvable problem. Ning Shu followed the team and wandered in the endless void. He watched as planes were devoured one after another. One power core after another was carried into the cabin. Ning Shu had never touched such a power before. She didn't know what it felt like. She looked at the people in the cabin and didn't do anything. If there was nothing to do, they would snap their fingers and whistle to give orders. Then, they would just wait to eat. It was such a comfortable life. Li Wen would occasionally talk to the little mouse. Otherwise, he would stand on the deck with Ning Shu. Until now, Ning Shu was still a little confused about the relationship between the little mouse and Li Wen. When he got closer, there did not seem to be any romantic atmosphere between the two of them. Li Wen and the little mouse were both indifferent. Could it be that she did not notice the undercurrent of spring? She and Li Wen were both outside, but the little mouse was not angry. This did not make sense. Ning Shu was scratching his heart and lungs. He wanted to ask, but he also knew that it was not suitable for him to ask such questions. Moreover, many insects ignored Li Wen. This meant that Li Wen's position in this team was not very high. Probably seeing that Ning Shu was uncomfortable, Li Wen took the initiative to say, "Ask whatever you want." Ning Shu immediately said, "You asked me to ask this." Li Wen. Ask. Why do I feel that the little mouse doesn't like you now? Ning Shu asked. Are you wronged here? Li Wen just said, he has that temper. He's like a child. He'll be happy one moment and unhappy the next. He'll be fine after a while. A child's temper. Did that mean that the mouse's IQ was only at the level of a child? If you don't feel wronged, why should I feel wronged? There are some things that you don't have to care about. It's better to be ignored by these insects without intelligence. Ning Shu looked at Li Wen. She was really open-minded and did not care. Perhaps others would be sad because of this disregard, but Li Wen was obviously not such a person. Instead, she felt close. Chapter 32-42. If these creatures without intelligence came to trouble people every day and had no intelligence, they would be the real trouble. Ning Shu gave a thumbs up. Royal brother is so open-minded, I have to learn from him. Li Wen, I killed all those who came to trouble me. Ning Shu, burp. Li Wen looked at Ning Shu with a faint smile. After living for so long, I don't believe you're an open-minded person. Ning Shu, I'm an open-minded person, as long as you don't touch my bottom line and principles. I've always been gentle and considerate, gentle and moving. What are you talking about? What are you laughing at? Your teeth are so white, aren't you afraid that the dust particles will break your front teeth? The little mouse stood at the door of the cabin and said to Ning Shu and Li Wen with an unfriendly face. He crossed his arms and leaned against the door, slightly raising his chin, looking like a proud young master. He walked over and looked at Ning Shu. Haven't you always been in the plane? Why are you here now? If you want to go back, I can send you back. Ning Shu, after sending her back, shouldn't he get some more planes to gnaw on? Such a big battle was to send her back and start a new round of war. It seemed that the previous war had just happened, and now that she had lured people over, the organization probably had the heart to eat her up. Although he had fallen out with the organization now, Ning Shu didn't want to get involved in so many planes and the Sea of Law. Although the Sea of Law seemed to be drying up and seemed to have no power, it could only wither and die, not because of her. Ning Shu waved his hand and said, No need, I don't need to go back, I'm here for a vacation, at public expense, I'll go back after a while, no need to trouble you to send me back. The little mouse looked at him with disdain. Coward, you're afraid that I'll bring a group of people over to gnaw on the plane. Ning Shu said lightly, You can gnaw on it, but you'll break your teeth. Little mouse curled his lips and said to Li Wen, Don't stand on the deck. There's a lot of dust. Go to the cabin and let her absorb the dust alone. Li Wen's expression was a little helpless. She's a guest. Show the spirit of a host. Anyway, she's going to leave sooner or later. Why do you have to speak ill of her? Is he a guest? Probably not many people dared to come here as guests. They were directly trampled to death by the endless number of insects. Although the little mouse's expression was still unhappy, he said, Okay, you can sleep at the door. Ning Shu, thank you so much. Ning Shu found that Li Wen was soft to Little Mouse and tolerated Little Mouse's temper. But in fact, Little Mouse still listened to Li Wen. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and looked at Li Wen. This imperial brother of hers was a little interesting. There were benefits to having a low IQ. It was easy to fool them. Because of Li Wen, Ning Shu's treatment was upgraded from the deck to the cabin. However, seeing these insects eating, Ning Shu felt uncomfortable. All kinds of strange insects were lying on top of the core power and gnawing on things. They were too ugly and disgusting. Could it be that being ugly was also a kind of power? Li Wen was obviously used to it. He was extremely calm and didn't even raise his eyelids. He was wildly cheering for his experienced and knowledgeable imperial brother. Seeing the power radiating from these core powers, Ning Shu really wanted to touch it. But Little Mouse watched her very strictly. Could it be that he saw that she had a plan for these powers? Who said that Little Mouse had no IQ? He was obviously very smart and could see that she had bad intentions. Ning Shu restrained her gaze and tried not to look at those powers. When Little Mouse saw Ning Shu acting this way, he sneered instead. What was she pretending for? At first, it was Little Mouse who stared at Ning Shu. Later, it developed to everyone in the cabin staring at Ning Shu. Ning Shu, why are you looking at me? Ning Shu touched her face. Do you think I'm very beautiful? Little Mouse rolled his eyes. Get out. Ning Shu, she didn't know how she had offended this young master. No, she didn't know whether it was young master or young miss. Young people. Ning Shu went out of the cabin. There were so many people looking at her inside. She felt that they were coveting her beauty. Standing on the deck and looking at the endless void, she felt much better. It was not a waste to come out like this. And when these insects were eating the plane, she also gained some benefits. That was, she collected some soul power. Although most of the creatures were annihilated when the plane collapsed, she could still collect some. Although it was not much, it was better than nothing. Now that her soul was not strong, it was really time for her to use soul power. Li Wen walked to Ning Shu's side and handed Ning Shu a rolled scroll. Ning Shu took it and looked at it. It was actually a road map, and it also marked the location of the birthplaces of some planes. Some places were crossed out. Li Wen said, the crosses mean that they were swallowed. The ones without crosses mean that they are still there. Our birthplace is here. Li Wen pointed to the place on the scroll. Ning Shu turned to look at Li Wen. You even recorded this? I had nothing to do, so I wanted to see if there was any pattern to the path these insects took. Now that I think about it, I thought too much. They just go with the flow. If they encounter a plane, they will eat it and keep migrating. But you should go back. This is not a place where you should stay. Little Mouse doesn't like you. It's not a good thing that the king of a race doesn't like you. Ning Shu also knew that she had to leave. Little Mouse stared at her with a strange look every day. Ning Shu asked, then are you going to stay here forever? Is there a more powerful race than this? Brainlessly powerful. Ning Shu. I don't think I've seen it. But it did not rule out that there was none. And there was no end to the void. Who knew what kind of strange creatures would be born in a place where a plane was born? Some creatures were brainlessly powerful, and it was impossible to catch up to them even if you flattered them. Racial superiority was something that made people gnash their teeth in hatred. Your end point was someone else's starting point. Sigh. Ning Shu took down the scroll and said, thank you, brother. With this scroll, they basically wouldn't get lost. However, these rats had gone to many places. This scroll was densely packed with blood-red pitchforks. Li Wen took out a core power energy body and handed it to Ning Shu. Didn't you want it? Take it. Ning Shu did not accept it. She asked, if you give this to me, will Little Mouse scold you? This feeling was like a poor brother living under someone else's roof. He secretly got something from the owner to help his poor sister. It's okay. He agreed. He heard that this little thing can send you away. He was very happy, Li Wen said. Chapter 32-43. Ning Shu was speechless. She probably didn't get along with the mouse. She was the one who discovered the mouse first, but the mouse got along well with Li Wen. Ning Shu accepted the fist-sized crystal. This thing was no different from a crystal. There was a trickle of power in his hand. It was not turbulent or sharp. Instead, it was very comfortable. If it was bigger, it would be more comfortable to use as a pillow. Ning Shu smiled at Li Wen. "Thank you, brother. See you again." Li Wen nodded. "See you again. You don't have to be polite when you meet. Do you want to go back to that plane?" Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "I will go back." In this situation, he wouldn't go back for the time being. She still wanted to continue to play, but she wouldn't play with these bugs. After all, she didn't feel good being stared at every day. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Brother, you've already given me something. I don't have anything to give you. This is for you. Eat it and it can strengthen your soul." Ning Shu took out a few kidney-strengthening fruits. "This thing is not bad. Eat some. It can strengthen your soul. I was going to give you a few before leaving. Now that you've given me something, I'll give it to you." Li Wen nodded. "Okay." Then she accepted a few kidney-strengthening fruits that were as black as iron balls. Ning Shu felt that the appearance of the kidney-strengthening fruit was really a little unpresentable. They didn't look very good. Ning Shu put away the crystal. Just as he was about to say goodbye to Li Wen, the little mouse's voice sounded again. "If you want to leave, leave quickly. Why are you dawdling?" Ning Shu said, "I'm afraid of the dark. I can't leave now." The little mouse looked at Ning Shu. "Nonsense. The sky is not dark. Stop talking and get lost." Ning Shu said, "You're really annoying. I'm here to see my brother, but you're scowling at him. What do you think my brother will think? How do you think my brother will feel good?" Li Wen looked at Ning Shu silently and didn't say anything. "What do you mean by that?" Little Mouse's hair stood on end. Ning Shu shook his head and said, "If you don't give me face, you're not giving my brother face. You're making my brother very embarrassed." Little Mouse's expression was a little conflicted as he looked at Li Wen. Li Wen still didn't say anything and just watched the two of them quarrel. The little mouse asked Li Wen, "Are you really embarrassed?" Ning Shu was speechless. As expected, he saw IQ suppression. There was no point in bullying a child, especially a child who was holding an atomic bomb. If she was unhappy, she would throw the atomic bomb at her. Ning Shu got off the boat and waved at Li Wen. "Brother, I'm leaving. Take care of yourself." Ning Shu wanted to say, "Come find me if you have nothing to do." However, when he thought of the endless worms behind Li Wen, he swallowed his words. Don't look for him if you don't have anything to do. The insect army was still moving forward. Ning Shu stood in place and watched the insects gradually disappear like a tide. He let out a breath. Where should he go next? Ning Shu took out the scroll. It was easy to find the way back with the route recorded on the scroll. However, Ning Shu didn't want to go back so early. Let's wander around. Let's see the scenery that I've never seen before. Ning Shu walked while studying the energy body that Li Wen gave him. How to use this thing? Can it be directly absorbed? Probably not. If it could be absorbed, Li Wen would have absorbed it himself. Li Wen didn't seem to have any desire for this thing. Probably human souls really couldn't absorb it. Ning Shu wandered around in the void, occasionally comparing the scrolls with each other. However, Li Wen's scroll wasn't a map. It only recorded the route and couldn't point out the direction. Ning Shu put away the map. Anyway, wherever he drifted, it was up to fate. However, as he wandered, Ning Shu encountered a group of souls. These souls were extremely solid. Ning Shu looked around. Such a group of souls had suddenly appeared, and they were so powerful. Ning Shu thought that he might be hallucinating. These people also saw Ning Shu. They walked over and asked, "You were sent by the organization. What's the matter?" Ning Shu asked, "Who are you? You're not here to find something?" One of them asked. Ning Shu shook her head. "No, I wandered here." "Are you from the organization? Do you know Tai Shu? Since you know Tai Shu, you must be from the organization." Ning Shu nodded immediately. "Then we know each other. What are you doing here?" Mission enforcers had come to the void. Ning Shu had always thought that mission enforcers wouldn't leave the organization. However, what were these people doing here? These people looked at Ning Shu suspiciously and asked, "Did the organization ask you to pass a message?" Ning Shu shook her head and said, "I just came to the void. I didn't pass a message." Ning Shu originally wanted to ask why they were gathered here, but it seemed that he had left the organization. It was difficult to ask, so Ning Shu didn't ask. The mission enforcers on the other side were speechless. Seeing that Ning Shu's soul was so weak, they didn't know what to say. "In that case, you can leave," a man said to Ning Shu. Although Ning Shu was curious about what these people were doing here, she still left. "Wait." A woman called out to Ning Shu. "You can stay. We don't have enough people anyway." Ning Shu nodded immediately. Okay. Only by staying could she know what these people were doing. Moreover, even if they wanted to use her as cannon fodder, they had to let her know something. Although they might not tell her anything. Ning Shu and a group of people squatted in the void. Moreover, they didn't speak to each other and were very quiet. Ning Shu couldn't help but ask, "What are we doing?" "Waiting." Someone replied concisely to Ning Shu's question. Of course they knew they were waiting. The question was, what were they waiting for? Seeing the solemn expressions on these people's faces, they couldn't be waiting for something to be born, right? Something was born in the void. There was the sea of law and the power of the plane. Could it be that they were here for the core power? If the sea of law couldn't hold on, then new power would be needed to replenish it. Then these people were here for the things in her pocket. But most of these things had already entered the stomach of the rats. There was basically nothing extra. She didn't know if the rats would have excrement after eating these things. What was the excrement? Could it be that during the war, the organization collected these corpses for this kind of power? Ning Shu felt that his guess was probably not far from the mark. They were probably here for the core power. Looking around, Ning Shu didn't find anything. The surroundings were pitch black. What were they waiting for? The atmosphere was somewhat stagnant. Ning Shu obediently waited for something to break out of the ground. Chapter 32-44. Ning Shu was speechless. She probably didn't get along with the mouse. She was the one who discovered the mouse first, but the mouse got along well with Li Wen. Ning Shu accepted the fist-sized crystal. This thing was no different from a crystal. There was a trickle of power in his hand. It was not turbulent or sharp. Instead, it was very comfortable. If it was bigger, it would be more comfortable to use as a pillow. Ning Shu smiled at Li Wen. "Thank you, brother. See you again." Li Wen nodded. "See you again. You don't have to be polite when you meet. Do you want to go back to that plane?" Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "I will go back." In this situation, he wouldn't go back for the time being. She still wanted to continue to play, but she wouldn't play with these bugs. After all, she didn't feel good being stared at every day. Ning Shu smiled and said, "Brother, you've already given me something. I don't have anything to give you. This is for you. Eat it and it can strengthen your soul." Ning Shu took out a few kidney-strengthening fruits. "This thing is not bad. Eat some. It can strengthen your soul." I was going to give you a few before leaving. Now that you've given me something, I'll give it to you. Li Wen nodded. Okay. Then she accepted a few kidney-strengthening fruits that were as black as iron balls. Ning Shu felt that the appearance of the kidney-strengthening fruit was really a little unpresentable. They didn't look very good. Ning Shu put away the crystal. Just as he was about to say goodbye to Li Wen, the little mouse's voice sounded again. If you want to leave, leave quickly. Why are you dawdling? Ning Shu said, I'm afraid of the dark. I can't leave now. The little mouse looked at Ning Shu. Nonsense. The sky is not dark. Stop talking and get lost. Ning Shu said, you're really annoying. I'm here to see my brother, but you're scowling at him. What do you think my brother will think? How do you think my brother will feel good? Li Wen looked at Ning Shu silently and didn't say anything. What do you mean by that? Little Mouse's hair stood on end. Ning Shu shook his head and said, if you don't give me face, you're not giving my brother face. You're making my brother very embarrassed. Little Mouse's expression was a little conflicted as he looked at Li Wen. Li Wen still didn't say anything and just watched the two of them quarrel. The little mouse asked Li Wen, are you really embarrassed? Ning Shu was speechless. As expected, he saw IQ suppression. There was no point in bullying a child, especially a child who was holding an atomic bomb. If she was unhappy, she would throw the atomic bomb at her. Ning Shu got off the boat and waved at Li Wen. Brother, I'm leaving. Take care of yourself. Ning Shu wanted to say, come find me if you have nothing to do. However, when he thought of the endless worms behind Li Wen, he swallowed his words. Don't look for him if you don't have anything to do. The insect army was still moving forward. Ning Shu stood in place and watched the insects gradually disappear like a tide. He let out a breath. Where should he go next? Ning Shu took out the scroll. It was easy to find the way back with the route recorded on the scroll. However, Ning Shu didn't want to go back so early. Wander around a bit more. To see the scenery that he had never seen before. Ning Shu walked while studying the energy body given by Li Wen. How to use this thing? Can it be directly absorbed? Probably not. If it could be absorbed, Li Wen would have absorbed it himself. Li Wen didn't seem to have any desire for this thing. Probably human souls really couldn't absorb it. Ning Shu wandered around in the void, occasionally comparing the scrolls with each other. However, Li Wen's scroll wasn't a map. It only recorded the route and couldn't point out the direction. Ning Shu put away the map. Anyway, wherever he drifted, it was up to fate. However, as he wandered, Ning Shu encountered a group of souls. These souls were extremely solid. Ning Shu looked left and right. The sudden appearance of such a group of souls, and such powerful souls at that, made Ning Shu feel as if she was hallucinating. These people also saw Ning Shu. They walked over and asked, you were sent by the organization. What's the matter? Ning Shu asked, who are you? You're not here to find something. One of them asked. Ning Shu shook her head. No, I wandered here. Are you from the organization? Do you know Taishu? Since you know Taishu, you must be from the organization. Ning Shu immediately nodded. Then we know each other. What are you doing here? Mission enforcers had come to the void. Ning Shu had always thought that mission enforcers wouldn't leave the organization. However, what were these people doing here? These people looked at Ning Shu suspiciously and asked, did the organization ask you to pass a message? Ning Shu shook her head and said, I just came to the void. I didn't pass a message. Ning Shu originally wanted to ask why they were gathered here, but it seemed that he had left the organization. It was difficult to ask, so Ning Shu didn't ask. The mission enforcers on the other side were speechless. Seeing that Ning Shu's soul was so weak, they didn't know what to say. In that case, you can leave, a man said to Ning Shu. Although Ning Shu was curious about what these people were doing here, she still left. Wait. A woman called out to Ning Shu. You can stay. We don't have enough people anyway. Ning Shu immediately nodded. Okay. Only by staying could she know what these people were doing. Moreover, even if they wanted to use her as cannon fodder, they had to let her know something. Although they might not tell her anything. Ning Shu and a group of people squatted in the void. Moreover, they didn't speak to each other and were very quiet. Ning Shu couldn't help but ask, what are we doing? Waiting. Someone replied concisely to Ning Shu's question. Of course they knew they were waiting. The question was, what were they waiting for? Seeing the solemn expressions on these people's faces, they couldn't be waiting for something to be born, right? Something was born in the void. There was the sea of law and the power of the plane. Could it be that they were here for the core power? If the sea of law couldn't hold on, then new power would be needed to replenish it. Then these people were here for the things in her pocket. But most of these things had already entered the stomach of the rats. There was basically nothing extra. She didn't know if the rats would have excrement after eating these things. What was the excrement? Could it be that during the war, the organization collected these corpses for this kind of power? Ning Shu felt that he might have guessed it correctly. They were probably here for the core power. Looking around, Ning Shu didn't find anything. The surroundings were pitch black. What were they waiting for? The atmosphere was somewhat stagnant. Ning Shu obediently waited for something to break out of the ground. Chapter 32:45. The atmosphere during the wait was very solemn. Ning Shu was truly curious about what these people were looking for, and whether or not it was what she was thinking of. Ning Shu wanted to find someone to ask, but in the end, it was written all over everyone's faces that they did not want to speak. An indescribable atmosphere flowed in the middle of the crowd. The atmosphere was extremely serious and tense. Ning Shu looked around, wondering what would be born. Perhaps it was because Ning Shu was truly too heartless, causing someone to ask, did the organization not tell you anything? What could she say? She snuck out, what could she say? The reason why she was here was completely because she wanted to know what these people were waiting for. Ning Shu shook his head and said, no, I don't know anything. Since that's the case, why are you wandering around in the void? Every place in the void is the same, you can't see the end, it's very easy for you to get lost. Someone asked. Ning Shu obviously would not say that he had fallen out with the organization, and only nodded his head, I'm just lost. The woman who called out to Ning Shu previously said, the sea of law is done for, we need new energy to replenish it, and now we need to find new energy. This place will give birth to new energy bodies, but this energy body actually has a self-defense consciousness, so whether or not we can obtain the energy body is still uncertain. This place could give birth to such a thing. Ning Shu saw that there was nothing here. Where was it born? Was it born out of thin air? Ning Shu had a look of surprise. Is there a problem with the sea of law? If there is an energy body, the sea of law will be able to revive the dead. Everyone present laughed bitterly. How can it be revived? The sea of law is already old, giving the sea of law energy to the sea of law is just delaying the decline of the sea of law. Old was old, divine pills and miraculous medicines were useless. Taking pills now was just to let the sea of law live longer. Although the sea of law was old, surviving for hundreds of thousands of years was not a problem. Looking for this kind of energy was to let the sea of law live for a few million years. Ning Shu acknowledged, and held on to the energy body in his pocket tightly. Although it was just a small piece, to be able to mobilize so many people to look for it meant that it was something good. Good things, don't reveal your wealth. Ning Shu wasn't stupid enough to say that he had this thing in front of dozens of people. There was no guarantee that no one would attack her. Although he wouldn't die, it would be troublesome. Ning Shu asked, "Is it very dangerous?" Ning Shu also became nervous when he saw how serious these people were. The people in the team stared at Ning Shu. It was probably because Ning Shu's naivety was beyond their imagination. Explaining it word by word was really annoying. "It's going to be dangerous. Be careful later," someone said and didn't say anything more. Ning Shu nodded and looked around, paying attention to the situation around her. As for what kind of danger there was, these people were obviously not in the mood to tell her. Ning Shu moved to the woman's side and asked, "You're the person in charge of Zone B, right?" The woman in purple looked at Ning Shu and asked, "Do you know me? I've seen you from afar before." It was mainly because the noble purple color she was wearing was really dazzling. One wouldn't forget after a glance. Ning Shu thought that the woman in purple had been killed, but it turned out that she was really exiled to do other things. Seeing that Ning Shu seemed to know her, her expression relaxed and said, "I'm not in charge now. Isn't Zone B gone?" Ning Shu. "This is a bit awkward, I can't answer." No wonder the organization said that since you like to wander, you can always wander. Well, wander in the endless void and find the core power that can provide energy for the Sea of Law. Ning Shu changed the topic and asked, "What problems will we encounter later? I want to ask you about it. This way, I can be prepared in advance and won't drag the team down." Ning Shu said quite sincerely. The woman in purple pondered for a moment and said, "First of all, there's no way for energy bodies to get close to you, especially newly born energy bodies. Second, there will be creatures that are born to protect the energy bodies. These creatures usually have powerful strength. Ning Shu, is there such an existence as a life-bound beast?" The woman in purple nodded. "You can understand it that way. The purpose of its birth is to protect. If you're lucky, it might not. If it couldn't get close, why was it so easy for those insects to take out this core power? Moreover, it wasn't dangerous in her hand. Could it be that the insects did something that made the core power not dangerous to them?" Ning Shu couldn't help but want to take out the energy body to take a look, but with so many people, it was not good to take it out directly. Could it be that the worms were spitting saliva on it? Many creatures in nature use saliva to hunt. Then the energy body she was holding might be covered in the insect's saliva. This was a business opportunity. In the future, he could catch insects alive and collect their saliva when he had nothing to do. But whether that was the case or not, he didn't know. Ning Shu asked again, "How did you know that this place would give birth to energy bodies? The void was so big, how could they accurately find this place to give birth?" The woman in purple looked like she had seen the vicissitudes of life and almost lit a cigarette. "Naturally, after various investigations. Let's not talk about it and wait quietly." The woman in purple ended the topic unilaterally. Ning Shu didn't insist on asking, so he waited quietly. Although there were many people, there was no sound at all. It was so quiet that it was a little scary. Ning Shu felt a little itchy in his throat. He couldn't help but cough, but he forced himself to hold it in. Under everyone's gaze, a stalk of grass slowly grew out of the void. This stalk of grass grew bigger and bigger, and it was a bud waiting to bloom. There was energy fluctuating in the center of the flower. Everyone stared at the flower bud. Clearly, the energy body was in the flower bud, and now it was waiting for the flower to bloom. Ning Shu felt that the void was a mysterious existence. How did this flower grow? It didn't need sunlight or rain. It grew out of thin air. And where did this energy body come from? It was too mysterious. There were too many unknown things. This flower bud didn't bloom. Everyone waited quietly. Ning Shu looked around, wanting to see what was protecting the core power. Ning Shu stretched out his hand and took out the God-beating whip. He had never used the God-beating whip, but now it was clearly useful. Roar! A series of roars suddenly resounded. An incomparably huge giant seemed to have torn apart the darkness and suddenly appeared. These giants were already huge, but their muscles bulged like mountains and were full of explosive power. When Ning Shu saw these giants, he thought of the prophecy. In the prophecy, he saw many giants fighting. Could it be such giants? These giants were very big. In comparison, mission enforcers like them couldn't even be considered sand. Chapter 32:46. Ning Shu looked at the whip in her hand. Could her whip really hurt these giants? It seemed a little risky. Moreover, there were quite a number of giants. Although they did not have as many as the mission enforcers, they were bigger than them. Moreover, they could trample all of them to death with one foot. Wasn't this a little awkward? It seemed a little risky to snatch the energy body. It wasn't just a little risky, it was very risky. Everyone's expressions were ugly, but no one said that they wanted to leave. Instead, they looked at the flower bud with determination in their eyes. Since these people did not retreat, Ning Shu could not just leave. Ning Shu wanted to see if the energy body could not be approached. If not, why did Li Wen not hurt it? The purple-clothed woman said, "I've already informed the organization. Now, we have to delay these giants to prevent them from taking the energy body away." Ning Shu was curious and asked, "Who are these giants?" The purple-clothed woman said, "I don't know. Anyway, there are all kinds of existences in the void. Don't ask. Think of a way to delay them later." As soon as these giants appeared, they were waiting for the flower bud to bloom slowly. Then, they would pluck the flower. When the mission enforcers saw this scene, they immediately took action and used all kinds of methods to stop the giants from plucking the flower. Ning Shu extended the god-beating whip and swung it. He wrapped the whip around the giant's wrist and pulled it desperately. However, Ning Shu's strength was not as great as the giant's. The giant waved its arm up and down. Ning Shu was like a kite. He went up and down, making him dizzy. The giant reached out to grab Ning Shu. Ning Shu quickly let go of the whip. If he was caught, his soul would probably be crushed. After avoiding the giant's hand, Ning Shu saw that the flower bud had bloomed. It bloomed with countless rays of light. The snow-white petals had a bright starry luster, and in the middle was a huge white crystal. It was filled with an indescribable power. This power was like a bright light in the dark. When one saw this thing, they could not help but want to pounce on it. Mother's embrace. However, it would be burned to ashes. When the giant saw that its power had matured, it immediately stretched out its hand to pluck it. As for the ants beside it, the giant didn't care at all. Although these mission enforcers used many methods, to the giant, it was just a few ants crawling on his hand. All he had to do was shake them a little. However, when the giants were about to pluck it again, one of their hands was suddenly pierced by something. The bullet directly pierced through the giant's palm. He directly stopped the giants from plucking the flowers. The giants looked at a spot in the void. The Grand Elder walked out of the darkness with a gun in his hand. When the giant saw Tai Shu, he said something inexplicable in a language that Ning Shu couldn't understand. The giant's words were like a roar. If one's soul was weaker, they would have been shattered by this sound. Grand Elder stood in front of the task enforcers and looked at the giants. He spoke the same language as the giants, but no one knew what he said, which made the giants angry and unhappy. All of them were glaring at Grand Elder like King Kong. The other mission enforcers were all dumbfounded as the two sides chattered on, not knowing what to say. However, since Grand Elder was here, everyone was relieved. The two sides negotiated back and forth. Anyway, they couldn't understand the content of the negotiation. Ning Shu took a few steps back. In this situation, she had to escape quickly. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to escape. Even the giant's palm could be penetrated. Her soul wasn't strong now, so it would definitely be destroyed. She hadn't lived long enough and didn't want to give birth to a new consciousness. At least when she was bored and felt that life was meaningless, she might want to erase her own consciousness. The giants whispered to each other. No one knew what they were discussing. Grand Elder stood motionless, waiting for the giants to finish their discussion. The giant said something to Grand Elder, then tore open the darkness and left. A black sword condensed in Grand Elder's hand. He slashed at the flower branch, neatly cutting it in half. He caught the flower and put it into the ring space. The mission enforcers all let out a long sigh. No matter what, the mission was now completed. They got the item. Grand Elder put away the energy body. Seeing Ning Shu running away, he said, "Why are you running? I won't eat you. Come back." Ning Shu curled her lips. "They won't eat me. They'll only kill me." Ning Shu smiled and waved at Grand Elder. She wouldn't go back. Grand Elder said, "What are you afraid of? Come here." Ning Shu walked over and said, "I'm not afraid." Although Ning Shu said so, she had condensed a drop of black ink like dirt behind her back. If Grand Elder really attacked, she would throw the dirt at his face. The other mission enforcers looked at Ning Shu. Grand Elder said, "Go back and rest. Ask the main system for the reward this time." Okay. The mission enforcers all looked tired and scattered away, but there were still some people who kept looking in this direction. Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu and asked, how did it feel to wander around the void? What did she think? Ning Shu thought for a moment and said, "It's really big." Grand Elder asked again, "What else?" Ning Shu thought carefully. "I'm really small. The world is really wonderful." Grand Elder asked, "What else?" Ning Shu frowned. "There are so many powerful races." Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu. "Since you know that there are many powerful races in the void, you should calm down and become stronger steadily." Ning Shu nodded. "Yes, that's what I think. But I don't know why. I'm very arrogant. Although I've seen so many powerful races, I'm still arrogant." Grand Elder said, "You're full of confidence. You've been wandering outside for a long time. Do what you need to do. If you wander out like this, you won't even know what swallowed you. Control your temper. You don't even know how to use the rules. Your brain is full of scum." Ning Shu said, "That's because I'm too lazy to use my brain. When I'm not strong enough, I'll wring my milk to survive. Now that I have money, why should I save a penny or two? If he didn't use his strength, it would be a waste. What was the use of the power that he pursued so hard?" Grand Elder said, "There are a lot of fallacious reasons. Your mentality is that of a nouveau riche." Ning Shu spread his hands. "What's wrong with nouveau riche? Nouveau riche is also rich." Grand Elder said, "Okay, just wander around. Don't wander in the void. Too many things can devour you." It was rare to see Grand Elder so easy to talk to. Ning Shu decided to poke his heart. Has the Sea of Law reached the end of the road? It needed to rely on this kind of power to maintain it, which meant that the Sea of Law didn't have much energy left. Chapter 3247. Grand Uncle, you don't have the ability, but you still have the heart to save the world. Do the mission well. In this void, no race will accept a weak soul, let alone a human soul. He didn't want to save the world. Ning Shu asked, is the birth of humans so discriminated against? Perhaps in the world, humans had absolute dominance over the creatures in the world, but to these races, humans were little reptiles. Especially since these races didn't seem to be born from a mother. Grand Uncle, humans are a weak, greedy, jealous, and ambitious species. They can even hurt the plane where they live. What else can't they do? Ning Shu, in the minds of these non-human creatures, humans were viewed as such. Although this organization was mostly formed by humans or other intelligent creatures, it didn't change the fact that they were discriminated against. It wasn't just women who were discriminated against, but against the entire race. Ning Shu sneered and said, "Then why use human souls? Grand Uncle, why not? Using humans to protect the plane that was hurt by humans is also considered protecting themselves. Besides, you were protected before. Why can't you be the one to protect it? Grand Uncle, as I said, it's a matter of mutual benefit." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. A matter of mutual benefit? I don't see it. Grand Uncle's eyes were full of contempt. When you're strong enough to make rules, you can talk to me about fairness. Ning Shu shook his head. No, I can't talk about it, I can't talk about it. I don't intend to talk to you. I don't intend to get any benefits from you. Grand Uncle said indifferently, becoming a mission enforcer is your responsibility. Unless you're strong enough to get rid of this responsibility, do you think you can get rid of it now? Touch your conscience and ask. Ning Shu, Where is my conscience? I don't have one. My conscience was eaten by a dog. Eaten by a dog. A dog. Grand Uncle glanced at Ning Shu indifferently. He knew that she was being sarcastic, so he didn't bother to say anything more to her. Think about what to do with your brain. Don't be hot-headed. The Grand Uncle disappeared in a flash. Obviously, he didn't want to drag Ning Shu back. Ning Shu wrinkled his nose. Humph, I'm not going back now. Since the void could give birth to this kind of energy, Ning Shu also wanted it. Just as Ning Shu was about to take back the garbage, Senior Uncle suddenly appeared. Ning Shu was so scared that he almost threw the black dirt on Senior Uncle's face. If it really hit his face, he would have to face the pain of his consciousness collapsing again. With a fake smile, Ning Shu asked, "Is there anything else?" The Grand Elder said indifferently, "I can sense energy fluctuations from your body." Are you talking about the energy body that Brother Emperor gave me? Ning Shu looked confused and asked, "What energy fluctuation?" Ning Shu's expression was very innocent. He had an expression that said, "What are you talking about? I don't understand at all." Ning Shu smeared the condensed dirt on his face. Sure enough, he saw Senior Uncle take 2 steps back. If it's energy fluctuations, I just touched the flower, so there are energy fluctuations on my body. Senior Uncle, you can touch it? Ning Shu, of course I can, because there's insect saliva on my hand. Even bit walls and energy bodies could be digested. The saliva should be very powerful. Senior Uncle raised his eyebrows. You can't withstand insect saliva. No, it will form a protective membrane on my body. Ning Shu made up nonsense. If you have the ability, go find an insect and test it. Ning Shu was a little frightened. They had discovered that there was a core energy body on her body. Since the organization spent so much manpower and resources to find it, it must be something good. It was given to her by Li Wen. There was no reason to give it to the organization. It was a personal item. Senior Uncle saw that Ning Shu's face was smeared with soot and couldn't help but frown. Do you have to make yourself so disgusting? Ning Shu, disgusting others makes me happy. At least I feel much better when I see you so disgusting. Senior Uncle only felt a slight fluctuation from Ning Shu's body, but he wasn't sure if there was something on Ning Shu's body, so he gave up. Don't wander outside. You won't even know how you died. After that, he disappeared in an instant. The vast void was quiet and boundless. Ning Shu let out a sigh of relief. He absorbed the dirt on his face and compressed it in his dantian. Anyway, this thing could be used repeatedly. Couldn't the energy fluctuations of this thing be covered up? If it couldn't be covered up, it would be discovered sooner or later. What should he do? This time, he managed to fool him. Senior Uncle got a core energy that was many times larger than this. What if he didn't? What was the use of this thing? Ning Shu first looked around. He felt that senior uncle was hiding in the dark and quietly observing him. He quickly moved away from this place and studied this thing. Ning Shu found a place where relatively large particles of dust were floating. Ning Shu sat on the big dust and took out the green crystal. It was a very pure green color, and the reflection of the light was very charming. It was much purer than the crystal, but it wasn't made of glass. Ning Shu wanted to absorb this power, but he couldn't absorb it at all. Maybe this power wasn't for people to absorb at all. Or maybe it wasn't for people with a weak foundation like him to absorb. For example, only a gifted race like the insect could eat this kind of thing. But this thing was also a dangerous thing in his hand. It seemed that those giants were also looking for this kind of thing. Senior uncle also needed this kind of thing. He had come to the void, and the organization's influence was still there. It was really pervasive. If he threw it away, Ning Shu would feel distressed. It had a special wave on him. What should he do? He didn't know how to block this wave. Ning Shu took out the peerless martial art. After thinking about it, he directly threw this thing into the law of nothingness. Since the law of nothingness could devour anything, it should be able to block this kind of wave. The fist-sized energy body was thrown into the water with a splash, and then a layer of ripples appeared. Then there was no after. There was no reaction. It was like throwing money into the water, and there was only a splash. Forget it. He had already thrown it away. He couldn't pick it up. Ning Shu looked at the endless world. The entire peerless martial art was like an ocean. This world had shrunk to the size of an ocean. Fortunately, he had collected a lot of star stones before. Otherwise, the world wouldn't be able to hold on. Ning Shu now had a new goal, which was to find such an energy body. Although he didn't know what it was for, it seemed very powerful. Since he was going to wander around, he might as well find this. Although senior uncle wanted him to return to the organization, he didn't have this idea for the time being. Chapter 32-48. Ning Shu continued to wander in the void and saw the giant. Seeing the giant, Ning Shu ran away without thinking. And he also encountered a wave of insects. This wave of insects didn't seem to be Li Wan and the rest. Ning Shu also ran away. If he was crushed by such a large group of insects, not even a speck of dust would be left. And Ning Shu also encountered the birth of an energy body. But the moment it was born, it was taken away by the giant. Ning Shu couldn't snatch it. Even if he notified the organization, they wouldn't be able to make it in time. He couldn't waste time. He had to return to the plane to collect souls and become stronger. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to snatch anything. Ning Shu followed the scroll that Li Wan gave him and returned to the familiar void. The workshop hadn't opened yet. How was she supposed to become stronger? She could only watch as others took away the good things that were given to them. She could only watch helplessly as others took them away. This feeling was really too painful. When would she run up and join in and snatch things? More importantly, when she saw these gifted races, she could only run. She didn't even have the strength to fight. Just his muscular and enormous body was enough to make people feel intimidated. There was simply no way to fight against him. Humans were probably the softest animals. Even ordinary creatures had sharp claws or venom armor to protect their bodies. Only humans had soft skin. It was probably because humans were intelligent and aesthetic. They didn't like hard and rough fur. Soft skin was more beautiful to the touch. What should she do? She could only hurry up and strengthen her soul. Ning Shu arrived at the wishing shop. The barrier was still there. Everything was the same as before. It was just that there was no business. This was a little awkward. Could it be that this shop couldn't be opened? Or could it be that it couldn't be done even if she wanted to? Probably the organization had a monopoly. If it really didn't work, she would go to every world to find wandering souls without consciousness. For those low-level creatures, they only had survival instincts and no intelligence. After they died, their souls were just a small group of wandering souls. Even when the soul left the body, it would be annihilated. It would be blown away by the wind or melted by the sun. Therefore, it wasn't easy to find wandering souls. There were slightly more in the world of reincarnation. Could it be that she was going to the millions upon millions of reincarnation worlds to obtain wandering souls? If the abyssal prefect knew about this, he would definitely stab her to death. This was a little difficult. Ning Shu chewed on the kidney-strengthening fruit while thinking about the future. She could wander in the void, but there were too many unknown races in the void. Moreover, these races were all freaking gifted. The goal of their entire lives was just the starting point of their birth. As soon as he spoke, he possessed great power. As for humans with weak foundations like them, no matter how hard they worked, their talents were limited. Sigh, this is how I eat lotus root. Ning Shu bit the steel ball-like kidney-strengthening fruit and squatted in the void. Looking at the billions of planes and samsara worlds, he fell into deep thought. The frog at the bottom of the well jumped out of the well, but the problem was that the outside world was very dangerous. Although it was very big, it was so big that there was no place for her to stay. How embarrassing. Come on, come on, come on. Ning Shu was no longer in the mood for business. If nothing unexpected happened, the path of missions was probably monopolized by the organization. She couldn't even make some leftovers. Moreover, even the souls that came to the boundary were also quite speechless. Then there was only one way left. Collect wandering souls in each world, and at the same time collect the soul power in her own samsara world. She didn't believe that it wasn't enough to strengthen her soul. She didn't know how many treasures there were in the void, but her ability was not enough to obtain these things. Not to mention snatching them from the hands of giants or insects, she couldn't even get close to the treasures. She couldn't even touch the treasures. She found it but couldn't get it. It was so disgusting. Ning Shu entered the samsara world. Zhu Jun said to Ning Shu, "Now there's no merit." Ning Shu. Since there's no more merit, then let's stop for a while. I don't have any extra merit now. Zhu Jun didn't say anything else and nodded. Okay. He glanced at Ning Shu. What are you sad about? Ning Shu said, there's too much to be sad about. I can't even finish talking about it. Zhu Jun thought for a while and said, forget it if there's no merit. Now all the skeletons have a layer of golden light on their bodies. However, some of them have started to penetrate deep into their bones, while others only have a layer of light on the surface. If the entire body was built with merit, even the depths of their bones were tempered with merit, then they would achieve true toughness. Ning Shu also hoped that all the skeletons could become true golden bodies of merit. However, he was embarrassingly short of money. He would think about it when he had more merit in the future. Moreover, even if he encountered any danger, especially in the void, these skeletons wouldn't be of much help. He would let these skeletons stay in the samsara world first. Ning Shu and Zhu Jun were talking when something happened in the reincarnation pool. Disaster beasts were born. The stench of the disaster beasts could be smelled from 10 miles away. The disaster beasts in the samsara world all fled, afraid that they would be contaminated. The disaster beasts crawled out of the reincarnation pool. Their bodies were pitch black, and they looked like both animals and humans. Several of them were born at once. Zhu Jun quickly found stronger skeletons to come over. Ning Shu pinched her nose and looked at the pitch-black disaster beasts. Anyway, she wasn't afraid of such filthy things anymore. She directly rushed over. Holding the thread-like power of faith, she directly tied up a few disaster beasts. At close range, these disaster beasts smelled even worse. These disaster beasts spouted filth everywhere. Some of it spilled on Ning Shu's body. Ning Shu's heart was in a mess. Zhu Jun and a few skeletons rushed over and dealt with the disaster beasts together with Ning Shu. The disaster beasts didn't have intelligence. They roared and their voices were extremely penetrating. Hearing the sound of the disaster beasts, some of the weaker souls would directly lose their minds. Ning Shu had threads of the power of faith. She gave a few to Zhu Jun and then pulled a few of them herself. Her hands formed a seal. The threads of the power of faith seemed to melt and turned into beams of light, penetrating the disaster beasts' bodies. The disaster beasts' bodies trembled. In the end, they directly exploded. The filth scattered in the samsara world. Ning Shu stretched out her hand and directly collected the filth. Since she could absorb it, she would keep it for her own use. So that the filth wouldn't contaminate the samsara world. Although there were a few disaster beasts, they didn't have intelligence. It wasn't difficult to destroy them. The difficult part was resisting the disgust. Some of the skeletons' bodies were also splashed with black filth. Ning Shu asked, "Is this okay?" The skeletons directly used their hands to wipe off the filth on their bodies. The golden light of virtue covered the skeletons with a layer of protection. It was like an oil film, protecting the skeletons from being corroded. Chapter 32-49. Ning Shu nodded his head. Fortunately, these merits were not wasted. Disaster beasts were born quickly and destroyed quickly. Ning Shu put away these filth and did not absorb them. Absorbing these things was not what Ning Shu wanted. Most importantly, Ning Shu absorbed these filth for his own use in order to absorb the impure soul power. Yi Lin and He Qing stood behind a black stone and watched Ning Shu and the skeletons deal with the disaster beasts. He Qing said, "Very powerful." Yi Lin did not say anything. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "She is very powerful. Unfortunately, she has always been so cold." Yi Lin did not know what to say. In any case, this cheap master of his really made people speechless. He Qing asked, "Do you really have nothing to do with her? If you don't have anything to do with her, why do you look so disappointed?" Yi Lin shook his head. "I used to have some relationship with her, but now it's nothing." "Forget it, let's not talk about the past." Yi Lin thought about his life. It was simply a joke. He was not together with the woman he loved. Moreover, he did not know how Bai Cc was now, whether she was alive or dead. His relationship with this master of his had gradually become indifferent. It was not easy to establish a sect, but it was besieged and killed by her disciple. It was really a failure in his life. Yi Lin did not know what to say about this life. He Qing could not help but say, "If possible, I really don't want to stay in this world. Is there any way to get out of this world? I have looked for her, but she said that I am not qualified. My heart is so tired." He Qing said helplessly. In the end, she went from a small city lord's mansion to a place that could not see the light of day. This world was gray all year round. There was no sunlight or color. If you want to see a colorful world, you can go to the past life pool. The past life pool could transform into all kinds of beautiful scenes. However, these were all empty and fake. If you want to start over, you must be reborn. However, He Qing did not want to be reborn. She watched as some souls in the world of reincarnation repeatedly reincarnated and finally turned into nothingness, turning into wandering souls without consciousness. He Qing didn't want things to be like this. Reincarnation over and over again, suffering the pain of reincarnation. Yi Lin said, "You'd better not look for her. She has always had a heart of stone. She won't do anything she doesn't want to do." He Qing sighed. She looked at Ning Shu and the skeleton in the distance with a depressed expression. Why couldn't she leave? What could he do to leave this world and see other worlds? During this period of time, He Qing's temperament had become much more stable. Previously, she had been too impatient and had offended others. He Qing said, if she doesn't want to, that's her own decision. You can't force her. Everyone has things they don't want to do. There's nothing you can do. Yi Lin said, you're quite open-minded. So what if I can accept it? So what if I can't accept it? Things are already like this. You don't know, but I was locked in a gorgeous cage before. Now, I'm in an even bigger cage. He Qing pursed her lips. Ning Shu walked over. Yi Lin grabbed He Qing and asked, where are you going? He Qing said, I'm going to talk to her. Yi Lin frowned. Even if you go, she won't pay attention to you. You'll just be asking for a snub. He Qing said, how can I know if I don't try? If there's a chance, I'll give it a try. She couldn't just do nothing for a little face. If she didn't do anything, she could only stay in this world of samsara. Yi Lin said, there won't be any results even if you go and talk to her. You'll only lose face. He Qing said, I'm not afraid of losing face. What's wrong with losing face? It's my own feeling of losing face. Other people don't care about losing face at all. Yi Lin didn't expect He Qing to be so determined. During this period of time, he had been staying with He Qing to look for wandering souls. Now, He Qing was actually going to look for Ning Shu and abandon him. Yi Lin felt like he had been abandoned by his partner. Yi Lin said, go. It'll be a waste of time even if you go. He Qing didn't care about Yi Lin's feelings, and Yi Lin wouldn't tell He Qing about his feelings. It would be embarrassing to say it out loud. He Qing left Yi Lin and walked over to Ning Shu. Yi Lin chuckled in his heart and watched from a distance. When Ning Shu saw He Qing, he was stunned and asked, why are you looking for me? Ning Shu condensed 2 stools with vines. He sat down first and said to He Qing, sit down. He Qing thought for a moment and sat down. She hesitated and said, I used to have a bad attitude. Ning Shu said, it's okay. Who didn't have a temper? As for whether He Qing was happy or not, to be honest, Ning Shu didn't care at all. However, He Qing was much calmer. She used to be aggressive, but at least she was much calmer now. She didn't want to play tricks on anyone. He Qing let out a breath and said, thank you. I've always wanted to thank you. Thank you for saving me from the city lord's mansion. Ning Shu said, it's okay. It was just a matter of convenience. Don't worry about it. It was a matter of convenience for you, but for me, it changed my fate. Otherwise, I don't know how long I would have been locked up, He Qing said seriously. Ning Shu pondered for a moment and nodded. That's true, with great power, saving and killing people was as easy as turning one's hand. Ning Shu asked, why are you looking for me? Tell me. Your soul's purity isn't up to par, but to tell you the truth, I can't help you. She had already left the organization. Although He Qing was disappointed, she knew it was within her expectations. She said calmly, thank you. I know. She didn't know what to say next. Yi Lin watched the 2 of them talk from afar. He didn't know how long they had been talking, but it seemed like they were having a good time. Yi Lin suddenly felt a little stifled. He felt like this cheap master of his was being treated differently. He also felt like he had been slapped in the face. He Qing had only come to ease the tension between them. She didn't think that there would be a result. Seeing that there was nothing else to talk about, she stood up and bid farewell. She said to Ning Shu, it's a bit shameless to say that, but I still want a chance. He Qing said, I'm willing to wait. Please give me a chance. Ning Shu looked at He Qing. I really want to leave this place. He Qing nodded. If I was ignorant, then so be it. But now that I've seen it, I'm no longer willing to live a mediocre life. Ning Shu said, I won't agree so easily. I won't go back on my word. He Qing said, thank you. I'm willing to give you what I have. Ning Shu smiled and nodded. Alright, that's that. He Qing left. Zhu Jun said, this soul is a bit interesting. Are you going to agree? Zhu Jun stared at Ning Shu with his pitch-black eyes. Chapter 3250. Ning Shu said, if there's a chance, I'll give her a chance. If there's no chance, then there's nothing I can do. Since she's willing to follow me, of course, I'll give her a chance if there's a chance. As for what happens in the future, let's talk about it later. Zhu Jun said, the human heart is the most unpredictable thing. I'm not afraid of anything. I just need to be firm. I'm not afraid of what will happen in the future. There was no need to worry at all. Because she believed that she had the absolute strength to deal with the future. What was there to be afraid of? Zhu Jun nodded and said, you should have such thoughts. You're not afraid of others being stronger than you. There's always a higher mountain. Compared to others, wouldn't it be exhausting? She wasn't afraid of others being stronger than her. Did she have to kill someone who might be stronger? Ning Shu stretched and said to Zhu Jun, I'm going to rest for a while. Don't call me if there's anything. What did you say to her? Yi Lin couldn't help but ask as soon as he saw He Qing. The two of them had talked for quite a long time. What on earth did they talk about? As someone who was also disliked by Ning Shu, Yi Lin now saw that He Qing seemed to have a good relationship with Ning Shu and had talked for so long. He Qing didn't want to tell Yi Lin the truth, nor did she want to talk about what they had discussed. He Qing said, nothing, but her attitude towards me is still bad. He Qing chose to lie. She instinctively felt that she shouldn't tell the truth. Yi Lin was skeptical, but he didn't pursue the matter. However, he still had some doubts in his heart. Ning Shu slept. When he woke up, a line of words appeared in front of Ning Shu. There were only 4 words, see you in Water City. There wasn't even a signature. Ning Shu replied, see you for what? Negotiation. This feeling of talking through the air was really cool. Let's talk when we meet. Sincerely. Ning Shu said, then let's meet. After going out for a walk, Ning Shu's mentality was a little different. Ning Shu went to the consultation room in Water City. When he walked in, the Tai Shu and the silver-haired man were both inside. Ning Shu sat down and asked, what's the matter? The Grand Elder narrowed his eyes. There was no fluctuation again. Tai Shu didn't speak. The silver-haired man next to him said, you can't open your own studio. Because it can't be started. If you want the power of the soul, you'll have to rely on the organization, the silver-haired man said. In the void, any race is stronger than the human race. Ning Shu didn't say anything. He just looked at the silver-haired man. Since you can absorb impure soul power, then in the future, when you complete a mission, all the soul power contributed by the client will belong to you. Ning Shu said indifferently, the organization won't take a cut from it. The silver-haired man said, no commission. The soul power of the client is all yours. It was quite interesting. Ning Shu, what else? Deal with the star stones and settle it on the spot. If you agree, all the previous merit points will be sent to your account. Ning Shu asked, what do you need me to do? Do what you used to do in the past. As a human, you're too weak. The only thing worth looking at is immortality. At most, you're an unkillable cockroach. But is a cockroach really unkillable? Ning Shu, you guys are really interesting. You despise me and then pull me into your group. Is it really so difficult to admit me? The silver-haired man probably thought that Ning Shu was too stubborn. It's just an analogy. Ning Shu said, that is to say, what was it like in the past will be the same in the future. The silver-haired man, the treatment is obviously much better. Ning Shu, no one will change shifts in the future. Yes, there will be more people dealing with the star stones. And it will be settled on the spot. There will be an extra 20% reward and 120,000 merit points per transaction. Ning Shu asked, "What about my god-beating whip?" The silver-haired man, "Isn't the god-beating whip yours?" Ning Shu smiled. "How interesting. Then what about the judge of District C? I'm from District A, but the judge of District B is actually managing someone from District A. Does this count as overstepping his authority?" The silver-haired man said indifferently, "Yes, it's overstepping your authority. There will be a punishment. I only have one request for you. Don't openly challenge the rules of the main organization. Don't be reckless. What if they hit me? Can't I fight back?" Ning Shu said aggrievedly. The silver-haired man said expressionlessly, "Can't you report it?" Ning Shu felt even more aggrieved. "If I report it, will the organization definitely help me?" "Not necessarily." "Ning Shu, then what's the use of reporting it?" The silver-haired man became even calmer. "You have to report it even if it's useless." The silver-haired man clearly did not want to talk to Ning Shu anymore. "Okay, go back and think about it. You can't survive in the void. In the organization, you can still stay together." Ning Shu just said, "Got it, I'll think about it." Then he stood up and was about to leave. When he reached the door, he turned back and said, "Is there anything else?" The silver-haired man, "No." Ning Shu said, "Oh, by the way, I have another request. I want to recommend someone to join the organization." The silver-haired man nodded without thinking. "Okay. By the way, her soul is a bit muddy. Her soul needs to be stripped." The silver-haired man, "Okay. Ning Shu, is my kidney-strengthening fruit still mine?" The silver-haired man, "It's yours. What's yours is yours. What else do you want to say in one go?" Ning Shu thought carefully. "Will someone take over the shift when handling the star stones in the future?" "Still waiting for the shift to take over?" The silver-haired man said directly, "Someone has already taken over." Ning Shu nodded and left the consultation room. The silver-haired man asked the Grand Elder, "Did you feel any fluctuations from her body?" The Grand Elder shook his head and said, "No fluctuations. It's probably because she really touched the power. If she can find it, it's her ability." The Grand Elder got up from the chair and said to the silver-haired man, "Watch her carefully. She's a small shrimp in the void, but she can cause trouble in the organization." The silver-haired man nodded. "By the way, what did you use to exchange for the energy body this time?" The Grand Elder said, "We have to find another one for them. This is a loan." The silver-haired man said, "Those people have always been overbearing and unreasonable. It's good to borrow it." The Grand Elder snorted. "If you don't want to borrow it, then go to them. They would return what they borrowed, but they didn't say when they would return it." Ning Shu returned to the world of reincarnation. Lying on the vine, he thought carefully about whether to leave or stay in the organization. In the Sea of Law, there were many more races. After such a commotion, the organization made a compromise. All the soul power from the mission was hers. Merit was what she needed. To be precise, it was what the skeleton needed. Even if she wanted to trade, she would definitely need to be an organization member. Chapter 3251. Now that the treatment had improved, it was just a little. It wasn't much, but it gave each other a way out. Ning Shu thought about it. Since there was merit to be gained, why not take it? She was a woman who needed to support her family. Not only did she have to support her family, but she also had to be responsible for her beauty. After all, a skeleton could only be considered delicate and not as beautiful as a flower. Moreover, Ning Shu looked at it. All the soul power contributed by the client was hers, and it hadn't been purified. Ning Shu didn't care whether it was purified or not. What she cared about was that she could get all the soul power contributed by the client. What was her weakest now? Her soul power was the weakest. Although she ate the kidney-strengthening fruit, the kidney-strengthening fruit could determine the width, but not the height, so she needed soul power. There was no business in opening a studio. Ning Shu thought about it and asked Zhu Jun if she could go back since her previous employer wanted her to go back and the treatment had improved. Ning Shu didn't care much about things like face. Being shameless would make one fool. What she lost was more than what she gained. As for the 3 nomological imprints, it was fine if she didn't have them. The nomological imprints were gone, but the comprehension was still there. Most importantly, without the imprints, she wasn't the city lord of the city. She didn't have to worry about the barrier of the city breaking at all times. Since becoming the city lord, Ning Shu hadn't collected much tax, and it was often a 100-year tax fine. In the hundreds of years of the fine, she still had to bear this responsibility, so she might as well just let it go. No official duties, no burden. Even if she didn't have the nomological imprints, she had death. What was more awesome than death? She didn't have to worry about the suppression of laws at all. Zhu Jun thought about it and said, "Let's see if you want to go back. If you go back licking your face when there are benefits, won't others laugh at you?" Ning Shu shook her head and said, "I'm not licking my face. Although I don't know what the organization's purpose is, the organization wants me to go back. I'm probably useful as a cockroach." At least she was good at handling star stones. She could easily handle things that others didn't want to do. Zhu Jun said, "Then you should go back. You worked hard, and he paid you. There's nothing much to say. But is your studio going to die just like that?" Speaking of the studio, Ning Shu simply wanted to sigh. Instead of waiting for business, it's better to borrow the chicken to lay the eggs. It seemed like the organization had a lot of missions. Even if there was only one person in each plane, it was still a lot of people. Ning Shu could now feel that the organization protecting the plane was actually an act of helplessness. If it was really like what Qing said, to directly abandon these planes, then the Sea of Law would be completely bare, and the insects would come, they would go straight to the Sea of Law and take away the core power. The Sea of Laws also knelt down. Although these planes would consume the power of the Sea of Laws, there were enough life forms in the planes, and nurturing some slightly stronger ants was also the power to deal with those insects. Low-level bugs gnawed on planes, while high-level bugs gnawed on core power. She didn't even have the strength of a lowly insect, yet she could directly devour a plane. Awesome. In short, it was a dilemma whether to drag it out and not die, or die immediately. But to Qing, what was the difference? There was no difference. "I just don't like these ants. What can you do to me?" Zhu Jun said, "Then you should go back." Ning Shu nodded. "Indeed, I can. By the way, find that He Qing from before." Not long after, skeletons came with He Qing. He Qing's face was a little panicked. She didn't know why these skeletons wanted to capture her. The skeletons came to capture her, and Yi Lin, who was with her, immediately left without thinking of saving her. Although the two of them were temporary partners, getting together to keep each other warm, Yi Lin leaving her so quickly still made He Qing feel a little cold. Moreover, the golden light of virtue on these skeletons made her feel very uncomfortable. She felt uncomfortable all over. It was probably the feeling of a malicious spirit bathing in the sun. When He Qing saw Ning Shu, she showed an aggrieved expression, but she didn't rush to question Ning Shu. The skeletons let go of He Qing's arm. There was a clear handprint on her arm, which was left behind when the skeletons grabbed her. It looked like it was burned. He Qing was in great pain, but she endured it and didn't cry out. Ning Shu asked, "Why are you looking for me?" Ning Shu said, "Your matter has been resolved." When He Qing heard this, she didn't care about the pain in her soul. Her eyes were as bright as two big light bulbs. She quickly asked, "Really? Can I?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yes, you can, but your soul is a little filthy. I have to cut your soul and purify it. It's very painful." Ning Shu had tried it once, and it was as painful as being cut into pieces. He Qing nodded repeatedly. "It's okay. I can endure it no matter how painful it is." "Really, thank you, thank you." He Qing didn't expect that the thing she had been begging for and couldn't get would appear in front of her now. She felt like she was in a dream. She couldn't believe it at all. "Can I really?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yes." He Qing was so excited that her eyes turned red. She said to Ning Shu in an excited voice, "From now on, I'm your person." "No, I'm your ghost." Ning Shu was very calm about He Qing's oath. No one could say for sure what would happen in the future. Sometimes, oaths were used to bind people, and it would make people hate them. Who would like someone to talk about other people's kindness to them every day? Not to mention kindness, even hatred would be born. Ning Shu said calmly, "I don't want you to become my person. I just don't like you hanging out with Yilin." This was her back garden. These two people were always together, giving Ning Shu a bad feeling. In any case, these two people were already dead. Ning Shu didn't want to target anyone. Since He Qing had this ambition, he would fulfill it. Whenever there was nothing to do, the two of them would gather together and whisper to each other's ears, which made people feel uncomfortable. Ning Shu knew that Yilin wouldn't say anything good about him. It was fine if he didn't see it, but being in front of him every day, it was hard to avoid feeling uncomfortable. He Qing lowered her head in shame and said, "I just want to know his relationship with you. I want to leave here." He Qing quickly waved her hand. "I didn't say anything to him." In any case, He Qing still knew that Ning Shu was her savior. He saved her from the cage-like city lord's mansion. The other women all went to the afterlife and jumped into the afterlife pool, but He Qing didn't want to. She didn't know what kind of person she would become in the afterlife/BK. Chapter 3252. He Qing didn't know if she would be bewitched again. No matter what, that kind of man was infatuating and full of charm. As a mortal woman, of course, she couldn't resist a man full of charm who was fawning over her. She could only work hard to become stronger and see more. Her heart would be firm, and she wouldn't be bewitched by appearances. Ning Shu smiled. He's probably going to say that she has a heart of stone again. Words like heart of stone were usually words of resentment. He Qing nodded, then quickly shook her head. No. She knew whether it was true or not. She didn't need to care about Yilin. If Yilin really had the ability, then he would become stronger and kill her to vent the hatred in his heart. Ning Shu contacted the main system and told it that he planned to go back. The silver-haired man said, "Your system space is still intact. Now we need to install a system for you." Install a system? What did he mean? Ning Shu rejected directly. No need. I'll just use the backup system from before. There was no need for a system. Although it was a system, it was also a soul and a person. Even if it wasn't a person, it was still an intelligent creature. It had intelligence and emotions, and it needed to be worn in. Ning Shu was used to being alone, so he didn't need a system at all. And since it was a person, it needed to be worn in with a communication method. Then the system space wasn't considered a private place. There was one more person. Ning Shu felt like an uninvited guest had suddenly barged into his boudoir, and it was a long-term resident. He suddenly felt uncomfortable all over. He was very unhappy and resistant. The silver-haired man said, "Do you know why it's a mission enforcer and a system?" Ning Shu said, "I don't want to know. I'm fine by myself." The backup system could do all the functions, and it wouldn't be nagging all the time. It also didn't need to take care of the backup system's emotions and say whatever it wanted to say. If there was someone nagging at him about everything he did, it would be a very uncomfortable feeling. His absolute privacy had been violated. The silver-haired man said, "It's because this can increase the mission enforcer's survival rate." The two of them have a discussion, and it also prevents the mission enforcer from doing anything irrational. There's also someone to remind them. You're the only one who's special. You've used the backup system for so long. Ning Shu chuckled. Was she saying that she was hot-headed? Ning Shu, then are you going to shove Jingqing into my hands again? Should he pull Jingqing out of the law of nothingness, drain her dry, and shove her back into her hands? Now, he had a biological rejection of the system. He didn't want it at all. The silver-haired man said, "No, it's just a normal system. I hope you can cooperate well. If there's anything, there's room for discussion." Ning Shu rolled his eyes. "I've already said that I don't want the system. I'm fine with the backup system." When she returned to the space system, she just wanted to lie down on her back. However, there were still people in the space system staring at her all the time. She couldn't put on an act all the time. Occasionally, she would let loose and pick her feet, nose, and so on. With someone beside her, she had to maintain her composure. The silver-haired man said, "If you want to come back, you need a system. A system will help you deal with some things. Dealing with things is fake, right? The real thing is to keep an eye on me." The backup system was more than enough to deal with things. How boring. Instead of being stared at like this, she might as well wander around. At least she had freedom. If she saw a strong race, she would run away. When people walked, they wouldn't care if they saw an ant running away in front of them. Who would be so troublesome to look for an ant all over the world? It's not to keep an eye on you. It's to remind you and tell you the organization's rules in detail. I don't want this kind of thing to happen again. Once is enough. Don't do it more than 3 times. Don't do it more than 3 times. There was still one more time. Ning Shu said, "What if I don't accept the system?" She was really resistant to the system. Who knew what kind of monsters the organization would give her this time? What kind of scary things? She was scared. She couldn't afford to offend them. The silver-haired man said, "We didn't say that you don't want the system. The system is a rigid requirement of the organization. I hope you can abide by the organization's rules." Ning Shu was speechless. Damn, they were indeed scheming. The rules on the surface? Weren't the rules on the surface restricted everywhere? Were they playing crossword games with her? The rules on the surface were used to restrain people. How could the unspoken rules be called rules on the surface? She couldn't even reject a system now. The silver-haired man said, "Everyone is a mission enforcer working with the system. Why do you think you should be an exception?" Ning Shu suddenly wanted to cry. "My system is Jingqing. He will always be my system. Although they are suppressed by the law of nothingness, in my heart, only he is my system." The silver-haired man said. "Are you sure you want him?" Ning Shu said, "If I say I miss him and want him to be my system, will you bail him out?" The silver-haired man said. "No, you should forget him and start over. Choose a new system and start over. He isn't worth your attention. You will meet a better system. You can't forget a special system just because you met one." Ning Shu said. "Thank you for your rotten chicken soup, but I still don't want a system." The silver-haired man said, "It's already been arranged. The organization will give you a promotion and a raise, but you don't even want your work partner. That's not good." Ning Shu said, "If you want to come back, you have to accept the system arranged by the organization." Ning Shu said, "If I don't accept, does that mean I don't have to go back to the organization?" The silver-haired man said, "Yes. Ning Shu pondered for a while and asked, then it's very special. Is it a system like Xingqing? The silver-haired man said, there is only one Xingqing. Ning Shu supported her chin. Her treatment had improved a little, but there were more restrictions on her. Not to mention whether she could get along with the system's personality, her rejection was enough to make the other party feel uncomfortable. Ning Shu asked, if I can't get along with the system, can we break up peacefully? The silver-haired man said, there is nothing that time can't solve. Pay attention to communication and understand each other. You will be good partners. There are so many mission enforcers and so many systems. They are all faithful. Ning Shu was speechless. Fuck. Faithful to the end, what a terrifying phrase. If she met a scumbag like Xingqing, she couldn't just leave him. Even if she did, it would be Xingqing who left her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to get rid of him. The silver-haired man said, every mission enforcer is bound. Why do you think you can't be bound? Ning Shu just said, got it, /BK. Chapter 3253. She didn't expect it to be so troublesome to return to the organization, and now there was another person. Wasn't it awkward? It was very awkward. If they met teammates while doing tasks, they could cooperate to complete the task and then go their separate ways. But if it was the system, she didn't know how long they would have to stay together. She felt very desperate just thinking about it. Also, there's someone here. Let her become a task enforcer. Ning Shu said to the silver-haired man. The silver-haired man, okay. Ning Shu said to He-Chin with some disinterest, your matter is solved. I'll send you over. Ning Shu built a space channel to connect to the consultation room in the City of Water. Go in. Go straight. Someone will receive you when you get there. He-Chin saw that Ning Shu seemed unhappy and didn't dare to say anything. She directly entered the space channel and looked back at Ning Shu. He-Chin walked along the space channel. It was a little dark in the channel and she couldn't see anything. He-Chin could only keep walking. There was light in front of her. He-Chin quickened her pace, but then she missed a step and fell to the ground. She fell into a room. It was the first time she saw such bright colors. There were tables and chairs in the room. Although it wasn't very lively, it made He-Chin feel very comfortable. She finally left the dark and misty world of samsara. She could see a beautiful world. A silver-haired man lifted the curtain and walked out of the inner room. He looked at He-Chin indifferently and asked, Ning Shu asked you to come? He-Chin nodded. Yes. Then come with me. The silver-haired man put down the curtain and entered the inner room. He-Chin hesitated. She was a little timid, but she had already come this far. She had to walk with her head held high. He-Chin lifted the curtain and walked in. Her eyes blurred and then she lost consciousness. Then she felt that her whole body was stabbed countless times, and the knife cut her body piece by piece. It was very painful. It was so painful that she lost consciousness. She wished she could just end it. The sudden pain made He-Chin feel very confused. But when she remembered that Ning Shu said it would be very painful, she could only grit her teeth and bear with it. Ning Shu didn't care whether He-Chin could bear it or not. After all, everyone's fate was different. The main system informed her that the system had already arranged everything, so she could go back and interact with her own system. Ning Shu, I don't want to go back at all. Ning Shu let out a deep breath. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Since he couldn't change anything, then he might as well get along well with him. Ning Shu also stopped resisting. She couldn't be so unlucky as to meet someone like Xingqing. The organization probably wouldn't give her such a person. Otherwise, she would definitely explode. Ning Shu returned to the system space, which was still the same. There was a spiritual pool with fish swimming in it. The sofa and bookshelves were also there. Ning Shu sat on the sofa and asked, "System, are you there?" The system said, "Nice to meet you, nice to meet you." The system's voice was male. Ning Shu was a little disappointed. Why wasn't it a cute little loli? In the end, it turned out to be a man. If he had known, he would have asked for a girl. At least the girls had something in common. Ning Shu said, "I'm Ning Shu, a mission enforcer." "What's your name?" "My serial number is 2333, the system said. Ning Shu shook his head and said, 2333 isn't a good serial number. Let's change it. Then what should I change it to? My memory has already been formatted. Your serial number is my name, so what name do you want me to change to? The system asked. Ning Shu said, "Up to you. I'm just giving a suggestion. You can call me 2333 if you want." The system said, "If you don't want to, then change it. I don't have any memory anyway. Names don't matter to me. If changing a name can make our relationship closer, then it's worth it." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. This system was a little interesting. She said, "Sure, up to you. Be my system." The main system should have some special instructions. The system said, "Telling each other the truth is the first step to building trust." There are indeed instructions. The main system said that my mission enforcer is a troublemaker, so I need to remind you at all times to prevent you from doing anything rash. If anything happens to you, the organization shouldn't punish you too heavily. However, I'll have to bear the rest of the punishment. My responsibility is to look after you. It probably felt like accompanying the crown prince to study. If he made a mistake, of course, the one who accompanied him would be punished. Ning Shu was speechless. The organization was a little interesting. Ning Shu said, "Okay then. Let's get along well in the future. If I do anything wrong, you can remind me. I won't make things difficult for you." The system said, "Thank you. Then we'll get along well in the future." Ning Shu felt uncomfortable with the extra system, but that was all he could do. The system asked, "Then what are you planning to do next? Do you want to do missions? I heard that you know how to deal with celestial stones. Are you going to deal with celestial stones now?" Ning Shu rested his chin on his hand. He had gotten used to the life of a mission enforcer, but he suddenly felt a little unaccustomed to it. It was easy to go from frugality to extravagance, but hard to go from extravagance to frugality. Ning Shu asked, "Do you have a basic understanding of my situation?" The system said, "I do have some understanding of you. It's the system's job to understand its mission enforcers." Ning Shu, who had been left to grow up in the wild, was a little unaccustomed to meeting a system like this all of a sudden. Ning Shu suddenly thought of something and asked, "The organization said that I can get all of the mission enforcer's soul energy in every mission. Can you get it?" If she took all of the soul energy, then what could the system get? The system was a soul too, so it needed soul energy. The system said, "My soul energy is provided by the main system, not extracted from your missions. Didn't you make an agreement with the main system?" Ning Shu nodded, "Okay, as long as it's clear." Besides, she absorbed impure soul energy, so the system probably couldn't absorb it. The system said, "Then what are you planning to do next?" Ning Shu said, "I'll do missions later." It had been too long since he did missions, so he was a little rusty. He had to adjust his mentality. He couldn't be careless when doing missions, because no one knew what would happen during a mission. Maybe the mission would fail. Ning Shu said, "Actually, you don't have to take care of me all the time, and you don't have to talk to me all the time. You can cultivate or do other things." Zheng Qin rarely talked to her before, and when he was doing missions, he wouldn't say a word from beginning to end. Unless the backup system had something to do, it wouldn't even talk to Ning Shu/BK. Chapter 3254 If the system kept talking to him, Ning Shu couldn't stand it. He was used to being alone. If someone kept talking, he probably wouldn't be used to it. Ning Shu really wasn't used to having someone beside her talking all the time while she was doing missions. He was used to being alone. He wasn't used to having someone else around. The two ended their conversation. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Ning Shu opened the status panel to see if the merit from before had arrived. In the future, he would be able to get merit every time he did a job. He wouldn't have to procrastinate. Name, Ning Shu. Age, 27. Level, Super Mission Taker Contribution Card, 247, 10 million points for one contribution card. Soul, 33 Health, 30 Wisdom, 41 Luck, 27 Charm, 17 Mental Power, 42 Martial Power, 30 Aptitude, 37 Faith, 25,000 Merit, 30,000,000 Soul Strength, 5 Authorization Ticket, 0 Pure Heart, none Comprehended Law, Water Law Incarnation, Wood Law Incarnation, Space Law, Earth Law Incarnation, Constructed World, Reincarnation World Tools, Calm Halo, Heart Calming Pill, Amulet 4, Upgraded Amulet +2, Faith Bell Honorary Titles, Goddess of War, Selfless Ancestor Skills, 5th Ring Shooting. Technique, Level Close Combat Technique, Minor Achievement in Peerless Martial Arts, Level Poison Technique, Low-Level Business Management Knowledge, Beginner Code Programming, Beginner Lawyer Skill, Divine Master Ghost Catching Skill, Beginner Cooking Skill, Level Embroidery Skill, Trash Hypnosis Aura, Mother of the World, Queen's Blessing, Sister Model Worker, Chin Shi's Blessing, Leader Aura, Grass Blessing, Best Friend for Life, Meow Meow Meow's Blessing, Life-Saving Hand, Zhu Su's Blessing. Founding Woman, Chen Ermiai's Blessing, Beauty-in-Law, Chen Ning's Blessing, Bane of the Blood Clan, Jasmine's Blessing, Transcending Race Communication, Bai San Yang's Blessing, Brave Heart, Wang Ying's Blessing, Bloodthirsty Tyrant, Ni Binyan's Blessing, Heart of Peace and Joy, Luck Halo, Faith Halo, Longevity. He had more than 30 million merit points. Previously, his account was poor, but now he had merit points. Therefore, although he had lost a portion of his soul power, he felt that he had suddenly become rich. Ning Shu converted all his merits into merit grains and took them all to the world of samsara to raise skeletons. Zhu Jun was quite happy to receive the merit. He asked again, where did this merit come from? Weren't you very poor before? Ning Shu said, yes, I was very poor, but now I have some money. It was just that he was not that poor. Zhu Jun nodded. That's good. I thought you were in danger. Ning Shu couldn't help but laugh. What danger could there be? While Ning Shu was talking to Zhu Jun, Yi Lin was pacing back and forth not far away. He kept looking in their direction. Zhu Jun said, someone over there has been watching us all this time. Ning Shu said, let him see. He was probably here to ask about He Qing. Ning Shu couldn't be bothered with him. After he finished talking to Zhu Jun, he directly teleported away from this world. When Yi Lin looked in that direction again, they were already gone. He couldn't help but sigh. What did she do to He Qing? Did He Qing disappear from this world because she killed her, or something else? Ning Shu returned to the system space and exchanged some fasting pills and medicine. He planned to do a mission. Ning Shu said to the system, I'm going to do a mission now. The system said, I'll arrange it for you. What kind of mission do you want to do? Ning Shu said, anything is fine. The system selected the mission and sent Ning Shu to the world of samsara. He hadn't done a mission for a long time, so he wasn't used to the feeling of weightlessness. When he felt that he had merged into a body, the first thing he felt was smell. Ning Shu felt a stench, with a sense of dampness and stuffiness. Ning Shu opened his eyes. This seemed to be a basement. There was a small window, and a weak light passed through the window. The window was so small that even a person couldn't pass through it. Ning Shu sat up and suddenly felt uncomfortable in his stomach. There was something moving in his stomach. She lowered her head and saw that her stomach was bulging. It seemed that she was not young anymore, probably in July or August. Ning Shu was speechless. This was the first time he was a pregnant woman, and a locked one at that. In this small basement, there was a bed, a convenient toilet bowl, a small light bulb, and a staircase leading to the surface. Ning Shu moved his body. There was a chain fastened to his feet. This chain was very long, thick, and long, enough for him to move freely in this basement. Ning Shu climbed up the stairs. His face was covered by a thick wooden board. He pushed hard, but the board didn't budge. It seemed to be locked up. He was locked up. Ning Shu returned to the basement. The air in the basement didn't circulate, so the smell of excrement couldn't spread. It smelled bad. The blanket was also damp and smelled a little. Ning Shu searched everywhere but didn't find anything to defend himself. Other than a bed and a toilet bowl, there was nothing. He felt his stomach being kicked. The child in his stomach was rolling. His stomach was falling. Ning Shu was speechless. This feeling was really strange. Ning Shu felt uncomfortable sitting or standing. His legs were swollen and painful. It was really fucking hard. Ning Shu wanted to lie down, but the blanket was so dirty that its original color couldn't be seen. He really didn't have the courage to lie down. Ning Shu supported himself against the wall and began to read the plot. However, the plot was slightly different from what Ning Shu had imagined. He thought that it was a plot about a woman who was sold to give birth to children. The actual plot was even more shocking. The client was only 19 years old. In reality, he was a child who had been locked up for nearly 4 years. He was locked up when he was 15 years old. When the client was locked up, he was just a newborn. He was brought home by the school bus driver and locked up for more than 10 years. During that time, he gave birth to a child. The school bus driver looked like an honest man. No one would have thought that there was a girl locked up in the basement, and no one had discovered it for so many years. And the school bus driver still went to work every day for more than 10 years without stopping. How good was his mental fortitude? And he gave others the impression that he was an honest and good person. How did he find out later? It was a 7 or 8-year-old child who was sick. The client begged the school bus driver to treat the child. Later, he was discovered by a neighbor. He thought that the school bus driver might have kidnapped the child and called the police. In the end, the client was found locked up in the basement. The client was rescued. Being rescued was really a relief, but it wasn't. This incident caused a huge sensation and caused a huge reaction in society. Translator, Lon_editor, Fodder. Chapter 3255. As a woman who had been locked up for more than 10 years, she was almost 30 years old and even gave birth to a child. Of course, it attracted a lot of attention. As a woman who had not been in contact with the outside world for more than 10 years, the media came to interview her. Her life in prison was miserable, but her life outside was not as good as she imagined. Moreover, for a child, the basement was all the child had. Obviously, the child lived in the basement since he was young and did not know what the outside world was like. He did not train his mind either. The outside world made the child feel at a loss. He was not used to bright rooms and liked to hide in dark closets. He did not know what the world outside the basement was like. The client was also under a lot of pressure from the public's concern. The media wanted to interview her. In the end, the client agreed to do the interview, but after the interview, she committed suicide. As for the school bus driver, such a bad behavior naturally had to be punished by the law. The biggest problem now was that there was a child in her stomach. What a fucking scam. If the school bus driver was to be punished, this incident would have to be exposed. Once it was exposed, the public would pay attention to it. Although the attention would only be for a month, or a few days less, but more than 10 years of imprisonment, imprisoning a newborn as a captive. It was shocking. The client committed suicide in the end, but she still wanted to counterattack. The system said, the client was unwilling to be tortured for so many years in the narrow basement, waiting in fear for the honest man's torture every day. And she won't be coming back. Ning Shu was speechless. Since she won't be coming back, why not adjust the time? Now that she has a child in her stomach, what do you think we should do with the child? Was it solved? The system said. You deal with this. Ning Shu said. Ask the child's mother what to do with the child. She won't be coming back. I've left this body, yes, this body, but what about the child? Ning Shu did not have the heart to say that the client was a little stupid. Since it was a counterattack, then the timing should be better. Since she had already contributed her soul energy, why not choose before the incident happened? Or perhaps when it just happened, she could still be saved. After the counterattack, she could still have a good life. She had wasted her soul energy. Being locked up like an animal for more than 10 years had already dulled the brain of the person who had entrusted him with the mission. Eating, drinking, and defecating in the same house, he was an animal, living like an animal. Even giving birth to a child in such a dirty place would make it especially easy to get infected after giving birth. In reality, the client's body was already at the end of its life. The system replied. Do whatever you want. Ning Shu asked, what the hell? The client said, she doesn't want to care about this child. Her father is a devil. Ning Shu. Fuck, this is really a moral problem for me. If he could get rid of this child, it would be a life. But after all, it was a child born in captivity. What could he do? And if the client doesn't come back, what will happen to the child in the future? After a while, the system replied, you can give birth to the child. If the entrusting party has a family, the child can be entrusted to the family. Ning Shu. Do you think the client's family will accept this child? This child's father had imprisoned his daughter. She had that man's blood running through her veins. Would the client's parents be able to accept it? Furthermore, this child would definitely be discriminated against. What a headache. The system said, they probably won't accept it, but they will still give her food to eat and let her grow up. That's enough. Sometimes, birth is the original sin. There's no right or wrong. Ning Shu shrugged and did not say anything. The child in her stomach kept kicking her and moving around as if it was constantly rolling. Every time it moved, Ning Shu felt like her stomach was going to burst. As for after the client's suicide, this child's life was probably not good. She might not be able to survive because she had lived in the basement for a few years. Her personality was also very strange. The child did not feel that there was anything wrong with living in the basement. Instead, she was fearless and fearful of the new environment. Under such circumstances, the child might do something crazy. She might cry, scream, or have an emotional breakdown. The child might fall sick and not live for long. Ning Shu really had a headache. Her stomach was also uncomfortable. As an unmarried girl, she had a miscarriage before, and now she was pregnant. Her life was really rich. Ning Shu rubbed her stomach. Her stomach was bulging. She was really hungry. After standing for a while, she felt uncomfortable. She felt that all the blood had gathered in her legs. Her head was dizzy and her blood did not seem to be circulating. Maybe the air in the basement was not circulating. The windows were closed. The passageway in the basement was covered with wooden planks. Air was not circulating at all. It was very uncomfortable. Ning Shu sat on the bed. She did not know if she should lie down or sit down. Her head was hurting. In such an environment, it was not easy for this child to be born healthy. She was eating something that was not nutritious. A school bus driver did not have a high salary. If the client did not come back, she could do whatever she wanted. The client had been imprisoned for so long. It was not easy for her not to be masochistic. If the school bus driver was a little nicer to the client, giving her a slap and a carrot, the client would not be so resistant and painful. How could she stand it if she was always in pain and was not given any benefits? Ning Shu sat on the bed and leaned against the wall, waiting for the school bus driver to come back. She was really hungry. There was not even a bit of water in the basement. Ning Shu's head was groggy. She closed her eyes and slept for a while. She vaguely heard the sound of the door being unlocked and footsteps. At the same time, a gust of fresh air rushed in. Ning Shu's spirit was slightly lifted. She looked at the stairs and saw a man coming in. This man was wearing plain clothes. He had a simple and honest face. He looked like a good man. His appearance was also very ordinary. It was the kind of ordinary appearance that did not attract any attention. He looked to be 35 or 36 years old. He looked at Ning Shu's stomach and reached out to touch it. Ning Shu's stomach shrunk back. The man's face suddenly became ugly. It was a little ferocious. So what if you are amazing? You are still giving birth to my child. The young girl was fresh and bright. She was wearing a school doctor's uniform and looked very good. Being surrounded by this kind of child made her feel very comfortable. She was chosen because this girl was bright and happy. She always played with her friends and let out a crisp laughter. The whole school bus was filled with a happy atmosphere. Translator, Lonely Tree Editor, Millman 97. Chapter 3256. These children wouldn't care about a school bus driver. They laughed as if there was no one else around. Ning Shu said directly, "I'm hungry. I want to eat something." A man like this couldn't tolerate rejection and failure. He was even more afraid of being rejected and discriminated against by women and doing crazy things. The man snorted. In the end, he made Ning Shu food. It was a bowl of noodles. Ning Shu didn't stand on ceremony. He picked up the bowl and ate. It didn't taste good at all. It was white water with a little oil and salt. There was no fried egg, not even a small green vegetable. Ning Shu said, "I'm pregnant. I need to eat something nutritious. Make it again. Fry an egg for me and add 2 small green vegetables. The child in my stomach has been noisy. It's probably because of insufficient nutrition." Ning Shu put down the tasteless water and said to the man. Wang Tiandong saw Ning Shu like this and didn't say anything. He took the bowl out again and locked the wooden board. Ning Shu didn't say anything. He sat on the bed and waited for the noodles to be served again. Not long after, Wang Tiandong made the noodles again. There were 2 fried eggs, a few small green vegetables, and a few pieces of shallots. Ning Shu raised his chin slightly and took the bowl. He took a bite and looked at Wang Tiandong. Wang Tiandong also looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't say anything and continued to eat. Obviously, the taste of the food was much better this time. Before, he was just casually eating. Ning Shu finished the bowl of noodles and said to Wang Tiandong, "These quilts are dirty. Change them for me. Also, clean this place for me. It's too dirty." Wang Tiandong glanced at Ning Shu. Seeing that she didn't make a fuss like before, he also put away the bowls and chopsticks and cleaned the basement. He changed all the quilts and tires and cleaned the basement. Ning Shu stood aside and raised his chin to watch Wang Tiandong clean. Wang Tiandong saw Ning Shu's arrogant look and didn't know what to say. Was it only right for her to make a request to him? Ning Shu's legs hurt from standing. He sat on the bed, changed the quilt cover, and felt much more comfortable. He said to Wang Tiandong, "Thank you for your trouble. I'm going to sleep." Wang Tiandong saw that Ning Shu had fallen asleep with his back facing him. For a moment, he was somewhat baffled. Why did he feel that this person was a little different? Wang Tiandong walked to the bedside and lifted the blanket. Ning Shu turned to look at him. "I'm not feeling well, so open the window a little. I'll die from lack of oxygen. It's not like I can run out of the window." She was ugly and poor, yet she was trying to imitate a domineering CEO. "TSK," Wang Tiandong said, "I'm not going to do anything to you. I'm just sleeping here." "Sleep my ass. Get lost." Ning Shu said, "The bed is small. It's uncomfortable if you squeeze me. Most importantly, you're squeezing my stomach." Ning Shu's expression was distant and arrogant, which made Wang Tiandong's heart stifled. The feeling of inferiority emerged again. He unconsciously wanted to please the woman in bed. Although he was imprisoned by him, facing Ning Shu's appearance, the feeling of inferiority emerged again. Wang Tiandong said, "Then change the bed." Ning Shu felt disgusted. "Change the bed? Do you still want to sleep together? Can you not be so disgusting?" Usually, Wang Tiandong would only stay in the basement when he was humiliating the client. After he was done, he would leave the basement. Basically, he would not stay in the basement for long. It was probably because the basement was dirty. In addition, the client hated and struggled with Wang Tiandong every time. How could a forced invasion make her happy? Now that she had a child in her stomach, she wanted to bide her time and wait until the child was born. Ning Shu said, "Either you let me live outside, or you let me live in the basement. Disinfect the basement when you're free. I'm pregnant and my resistance is not very good." Wang Tiandong wanted to deliver the goods. He was holding back his anger, but when he saw Ning Shu's eyes, he could not help but want to agree. In the end, he left the basement bitterly. What a bitch. He wanted to be good to her, but she did not appreciate it at all. Ning Shu curled her lips and touched her stomach. The meat in her stomach was really annoying. Instead of losing it and suffering, it was better to give birth to it. The child in this month, even if she lost it, she would still suffer after giving birth. If she did not have this child, things would be much simpler. After that, Ning Shu was very picky about what she ate. Relying on the fact that she was pregnant, she wanted to eat this and that. She could not eat bad food. Otherwise, she would put it down after a bite. The sheets had to be changed every 2 days. The basement had to be disinfected at all times. Some lime had to be sprinkled on the ground to absorb moisture. In short, there were many requirements. What was more funny was that Wang Tiandong did all of them. He was probably numbing himself. "Although I kidnapped you and imprisoned you, I'm treating you well now. You should stay and live a good life with me." Probably with this mentality, Wang Tiandong agreed to all of Ning Shu's requests. He tried his best to satisfy Ning Shu. He was probably immersed in the beauty of his imagination. To Wang Tiandong, having requests could wash away the guilt in his heart. Ning Shu only looked coldly at Wang Tiandong's fawning. In Wang Tiandong's heart, she was Wang Tiandong's woman. How could doing such a thing make her willingly stay here? He was thinking too much. Although they lived in the basement, the environment was much better. They ate well, slept well, and waited for the child to be born. Ning Shu had already thought of where the child would go. He had to leave this world after completing his mission, so he could not take care of the child. Of course, this child had to be entrusted to the family, and he could not tell the family of the person who entrusted the child's background. If it really could not be done, he would be sent to an orphanage. It was better than living in this basement. Moreover, Wang Tiandong, since the person who entrusted the child would not come back, he would definitely do whatever he wanted. After finishing, he would immediately withdraw. It was too exciting. Wang Tiandong moved a big bed to the basement. This bed looked much softer, and the quilt cover was brightly colored, adding some color to the dim basement. Wang Tiandong said, "If you don't say that the bed is small, I will change it for you." There was no way to move the big bed into the basement. It was assembled with parts. Ning Shu looked at the bed expressionlessly and asked, "Do you want to sleep with me?" Wang Tiandong said, "There is no such thing." Since it was a comfortable bed, Ning Shu did not need to refuse. Why would he refuse a way to make himself comfortable? As for Wang Tiandong's fawning, Ning Shu only felt disgusted. No matter what Wang Tiandong did, he could not cover up what he had done. He had imprisoned the person who entrusted the child for more than 10 years. During this time, the psychological and physical damage to the child could not be erased. What Ning Shu wanted to do was to take revenge for the child who had been wronged for more than 10 years. Translator, Lon_editor, Globe Glotter. Chapter 3257. Except for the lack of freedom, Ning Shu's life was quite good. She had clean clothes to wear, a comfortable bed to sleep in, and she didn't eat food that didn't taste good. Ning Shu originally wanted to cultivate, but with a child in her belly, she felt that her stomach was falling every day. And it was pressing on her bladder, so she had to go to the bathroom at every turn. It was very annoying to go to the bathroom. Not to mention cultivating. This was a modern plane, where there was no spiritual energy, and there was a child in the mother's body. No matter what kind of creature it was, giving birth to the next generation was definitely a test for the mother. Even if it would harm the mother, it was actually absorbing the mother's energy. She had to wait until the melon was ripe before she made plans. There was no way to cultivate. She could only find something to defend herself, and she wouldn't make a scene with Wang Tiandong hysterically. There was no benefit in making a scene. This kind of quietness, on the contrary, could make Wang Tiandong become careless. He would probably think that she had given up and no longer resisted him. Even if Ning Shu treated Wang Tiandong with an indifferent attitude, Wang Tiandong didn't seem to be angry. Ning Shu said that she needed water to wash her hands, so she had to prepare some water in the basement at all times. Wang Tiandong looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. "Don't tell me you want to commit suicide." It was like drowning herself. Ning Shu rolled her eyes. "If I want to die, I can just hit the wall. My head can't be harder than the wall. There are many ways to die. Why would I want to drown?" Wang Tiandong seemed to be an honest and dull person, not good with words. When Ning Shu said this, he was speechless. He was angry, but he still did as Ning Shu said. In the basement, a water tank, a basin, and all kinds of washing things were prepared. Before Ning Shu came, the environment was as dirty as a pigsty, but now the living environment was much better. Wang Tiandong was actually very happy. She didn't say that she wanted to leave the basement, nor did she yell at him. Maybe she wanted to live a good life. Except for letting her out, Wang Tiandong would try his best to satisfy her as long as it was within his ability. As long as they didn't cause a ruckus, everything was fine. Ning Shu did not reject Wang Tiandong's attentiveness. "If you want to give me something good to eat, why don't I eat it?" Sometimes, Wang Tiandong would even secretly buy women's clothes for Ning Shu and send them to Ning Shu. Ning Shu only glanced at it and did not comment on whether it looked good or not. Anyway, she was pregnant now, so it was the same no matter what she wore. Wang Tiandong was a school bus driver. He picked up and dropped off students several times a day, so sometimes he spent more time at home. When he had nothing to do, he would stay in the basement and stare at Ning Shu. Recently, Ning Shu had washed himself very clean. In addition to eating nutritious and clean food, he had put on some weight. The client's appearance wasn't bad. Otherwise, Wang Tiandong wouldn't have specifically chosen the client. Therefore, incidents like this were usually committed by acquaintances. Those parents did not know that the driver of the car their children rode in every day was actually such a person. No one could imagine that Wang Tiandong would do such a crazy thing through his simple and honest face. No one had ever suspected him. In the beginning, the client's parents anxiously looked for their daughter every day. They sent out all kinds of advertisements and asked the media for help, but there was no news of their daughter. They couldn't find her if she was alive or dead. She disappeared just like that. Relatives and friends said that she might have been kidnapped and sold to the mountains. They didn't know if she was dead or alive. After a long time, the family gave up and treated it as if the child was dead and disappeared. Sometimes, a person's appearance was a very tempting mask. Moreover, Wang Tiandong looked like an honest person who didn't cause trouble. It didn't matter, he was good, he could do anything. Basically, he wouldn't be angry with others. In school, the evaluation of him was also good. When the client was dragged to the basement by the school bus driver and was humiliated by him, she was very desperate and shocked. She probably didn't expect that the school bus driver, who had no impression of her, would have the opportunity to do such a thing to her. When Wang Tiandong stared at Ning Shu let him stare. No matter how he stared, Ning Shu looked calm. In fact, Ning Shu hoped that the child in her belly would be born soon. After giving birth, her body would feel better. After giving birth, she would take care of her body. Ning Shu said to Wang Tiandong, "I'll give birth here too. If something happens to me, you'll have to dispose of my body. It's so troublesome and easy to be discovered." Wang Tiandong, now, she wouldn't shout at him like a crazy demon. Every time she saw him, she would pounce on him like an enemy and bite him. But now, her words were particularly rude. There was a kind of bone-piercing pain. It was also a ghastly sight. Although she didn't make a fuss, every word she said reminded Wang Tiandong that he was doing something outrageous and illegal. So Wang Tiandong was always frightened. At that time, he was impulsive. If he let her go, he would be the unlucky one. The law wouldn't let her go. And the girl's family wouldn't let him go. So he had been imprisoned until now. Until this girl was forgotten and no one mentioned her. His life was the same as before. Wang Tiandong said directly, "You can't go anywhere. You can only stay here. The child will be born safely." After all, it was his child. Wang Tiandong didn't kill it directly. He felt that he should make the basement more secure to avoid the baby's crying being heard by the people around. Ning Shu wasn't surprised at all because Wang Tiandong didn't dare to take her to the hospital. Damn, giving birth in the basement. If she wasn't careful, she would lose her life. Ning Shu couldn't cultivate now. She was an ordinary person. In addition, the basement was cold and damp. There was no sunlight. It was not easy to absorb the power of the sun. It was really a mess. And the child's father was like this. MMP. Wang Tiandong said, "I will buy some medicine for you. Nothing will happen." When Wang Tiandong said this, he didn't quite believe it himself. So he looked a little flustered. It's easy for some women to give birth. It was easy. This body wasn't even 20 years old. Her bones were just slightly opened. Was it easy to give birth? What if it was infected? Ning Shu didn't want anything to happen to the child midway and cause this mission to fail. Ning Shu sneered. Wang Tiandong's ears were red with embarrassment. He looked at Ning Shu fiercely. "What are you laughing at? You're not that junior high school student anymore. What's there to be proud of?" Chapter 32:58. Ning Shu sneered again. "I'm not afraid of you at all. Whether you want to kill me or not, it will be more troublesome if you kill me than if I live. You have to deal with my body. If you don't, it will rot and the smell will spread. Won't anyone find out?" Ning Shu was now like a durian in Wang Tiandong's hand. If he really peeled it and the smell spread, it would arouse suspicion around. But if he didn't peel it, it would be prickly, very prickly. Wang Tiandong gritted his teeth. You deliberately angered me. Even if you are, I can bury you in the basement. Although it was a cement floor, he could be buried if he was knocked out of the water and dug out the cement. If it doesn't work, just seal it in the cement. Ning Shu nodded. Sure enough, there is no lower limit to the evil of human nature. You never know how evil a person can be. Wang Tiandong was ridiculed by Ning Shu. He turned and went up the stairs. After thinking about it, he turned back and said, so don't think of any bad ideas. It won't do me any harm whether you are dead or alive. If you are really dead, I can also raise this child. I will tell the public that I adopted him. He could casually say that he picked him up on the side of the road. Even if someone pursued him, no one would be able to take the child away. A child couldn't speak and couldn't do anything. After Wang Tiandong finished speaking, he left the basement and locked the passage. Ning Shu curled his lips and touched his stomach. He felt really uncomfortable. His stomach seemed to be squeezed out of his throat. Ning Shu used a little spiritual power to check. The child was healthy and not very big. It probably had something to do with nutrition. In the beginning, he didn't absorb much nutrition. All 4 limbs were healthy and not deformed. If the child was not big and was born well, he shouldn't suffer much. The client was able to give birth to the child under such bad conditions probably because the child was small. If the child was a little fat, there would be no way to give birth naturally. However, they couldn't go to the hospital for a cesarean section. It was very likely that 2 lives would be lost. So there were advantages to having a small child. At least both of them survived. Because there was still 1 or 2 months before the baby was born, Ning Shu treated Wang Tiandong like a servant during this period of nurturing. Sometimes, she would need a bouquet of flowers. Sometimes, she would want to eat something. Wang Tiandong breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the unpleasant conversation last time was over. He said, I bought some medicine for you, as well as children's diapers and milk powder. Ning Shu nodded. Very good. It's what I need. When Wang Tiandong saw Ning Shu like this, he cheered in his heart. He was excited to be recognized. A man like Wang Tiandong was so ordinary that no woman would look at him for more than a second. That kind of inferiority that was engraved in the bones could be said to be innate. Other than being honest, he had no other good points. Now that there was a woman to bear it, Wang Tiandong was very happy in his heart. He took out the items one by one so that he could tell Ning Shu how to use them. Ning Shu didn't say a word. He just looked at Wang Tiandong indifferently. Even so, it made Wang Tiandong talk more and more energetically. I bought boys' clothes. The child should be a boy, right? Your sister, it's a girl. Ning Shu chuckled. I don't know. I can't see the child through the belly. Wang Tiandong reached out to touch Ning Shu's belly, but Ning Shu avoided him. Your hand is cold. Don't touch my belly. I'm not feeling well. Although Wang Tiandong was unhappy, he didn't touch it. He put his hand in his chest and said, I'll warm it up. Ning Shu's straightforward disdain made Wang Tiandong dislike it very much. He also had a trace of hostility. She had become his prisoner, yet she was still like this. Did she still think that she was a young girl, a proud and wanton girl? No. But at that time, Wang Tiandong had taken a fancy to her. He was envious of her coquettish and youthful wanton body. But after being brought here, she had been staring at him with hatred and fear. Her body was dirty from head to toe. She didn't want to eat, but he forced her to eat. He forced it into her mouth. This pride was something that Wang Tiandong loved and hated. Since he was envious, he also had a bit of hatred. Such a girl wouldn't even look at him. Even if she took the school bus every day, she would never look at him, the school bus driver. That kind of inferiority, fear, envy, and hatred attacked Wang Tiandong's heart. An ordinary man was not qualified to receive a woman's favor and gaze. Men seem to be powerful creatures, but sometimes a woman's gaze was enough to destroy their pride and self-confidence. Because a woman could refuse to accept his genes and refuse to give birth to the next generation. The genes could not be passed down. Without a mate, just like in the animal kingdom, no female would be willing to mate with a loser. People were also animals. Men scolded women for being materialistic and vain. They knew that because they couldn't meet the needs of women, they couldn't communicate with women. They could only use this kind of attack to vent their resentment. Wang Tiandong was one of the many men like this. And he was the lowest kind of man. For so many years, Wang Tiandong didn't get married. His family conditions weren't good, and he didn't have anything to show. Honesty was a merit. The reason why he was honest was because he didn't even have the chance to be dishonest. And was Wang Tiandong honest? If he wasn't honest, he wouldn't have done such a thing. He could imprison a girl for more than 10 years as if nothing had happened. During the pregnancy, Ning Shu was indifferent to Wang Tiandong, but Wang Tiandong found a sense of home from Ning Shu. After this period of time, Ning Shu understood Wang Tiandong well enough. A man without any core competitiveness, who didn't dare to do things openly, could only use this kind of method to plunder girls. And his heart was conflicted. He hated Ning Shu. It was probably Ning Shu's high and mighty attitude that provoked him, but he also subconsciously tried to please Ning Shu. He tried his best to satisfy whatever he wanted, subconsciously buying the best thing. Ning Shu's attitude towards men with this kind of mentality became more and more high and mighty. Since you like this, you can still slap your face, and your life can be comfortable, why not use it? Ning Shu's attitude was high and mighty, but he would occasionally affirm Wang Tiandong. A little stingy affirmation made Wang Tiandong feel very happy. An inferior and vicious man. Ning Shu couldn't help but laugh in his heart. The physical pain was nothing, but the mental torture was called torture. The client had been tortured by physical pain and mental fear for so many years. Chapter 3259. If it was just physical torture, it was also mental torture. Later, Ning Shu felt more and more uncomfortable in her stomach. She couldn't sleep the whole night and tossed and turned. Her legs were also swollen. Ning Shu couldn't even rub her legs because her stomach was in the way. Perhaps it was because she was thin, her stomach looked particularly big, so big that it was a little scary. In fact, the child wasn't big, but there was a lot of amniotic fluid. It was painful to give birth, and it was hard to carry the child. She had morning sickness at the beginning, and later, her body became clumsy and she wanted to go to the toilet. If it was the crystallization of love, it would be fine, but the child in her stomach, Ning Shu was very calm. After all, this child wasn't her child. During this period, Wang Tiandong liked to run to the basement more and more. As long as he didn't go to work, he would stay with Ning Shu. It was like a couple staying together. Ning Shu was indifferent, but she didn't reject it. Wang Tiandong successfully fell into his fantasy. He felt that they were a happy family, and a woman was pregnant with his child. Although he had used some tricks, the result was good, and that was enough. Wang Tiandong hypnotized himself. Because Ning Shu didn't want to sleep on the same bed as Wang Tiandong made a bed on the floor. Even so, he was still very vigilant. The key never left his body. When he slept, he would wake up at the slightest movement. Ning Shu was really annoyed by this person. The basement was only so big. She wanted to go to the toilet, and she wanted to go to the toilet in front of a man. Ning Shu asked Wang Tiandong to pull a curtain and solve the problem behind the curtain. Wang Tiandong naturally did as he was told. Such a simple thing was a piece of cake for him. Wang Tiandong had already regarded Ning Shu as his wife. He even fell into his fantasy and was looking forward to the child in Ning Shu's stomach. Every time he wanted to touch it, he would first warm his hands. Even so, Ning Shu still didn't let him touch it. Touch your own. It's so disgusting. Although Wang Tiandong was unhappy, he knew that it would take a long time for this girl to completely accept him. It was already a big improvement. When the child was born, the mother usually couldn't bear to part with the child. When the time came, he would send the child to school and tell the public that the child was adopted. He was adopted because his relatives had too many children and couldn't afford to raise him. Then, she could successfully solve the problem of the child's identity. Although she had been wronged to live in the basement, when the child came back from school, the family of 3 would be reunited in the basement. It was perfect. Because of the change in Ning Shu's attitude, Wang Tiandong also had a plan for the future of this child. He was not going to leave him in the basement like in the original plot. It was not easy for a child to successfully grow to 5 or 6 years old, especially in such a harsh environment. If Ning Shu knew what Wang Tiandong was thinking, he would spit at him. They reunited in the basement, locked her up in the basement, and then pretended to be a happy family. Children who came into contact with the outside world would grow up day by day. Wouldn't they find it strange that their mother was like a criminal? Wang Tiandong was really ignorant and vicious. The client was a human being, not a beast that was locked up in a pen and had no thoughts or feelings. Just a little bit of color was enough to open a dye house. However, this color had to continue. Fall into your beautiful fantasy. When the time comes, it will be more painful when the fantasy is shattered. Ning Shu took the initiative to ask, "What name do you want to give this child?" Wang Tiandong did not think of this for a moment. Giving a name to the child, his heart thumped. "I'll check the dictionary and give the child a nice name." A nice name. Wang Tiandong left the basement and locked the heavy wooden door. It was like Wang Tiandong's instinct that he would never forget. Even though he was now immersed in his fantasy, he never thought of letting Ning Shu out of the basement. He probably knew that if Ning Shu was released, he would run away. Wang Tiandong was immersed in the excitement of naming. Every day, he would come up with many names to bother Ning Shu. Ning Shu said impatiently, "You decide." "Okay." Wang Tiandong felt that this was Ning Shu admitting that he was still the child's father. In the plot, this child didn't have a proper name. There was only one name, and that was Doll. The client's feelings for this child were very complicated. It was her own child, and she had such a father who stayed with her in a basement that didn't see the light of day. Pity was mixed with disgust. She wasn't very close to this child. The child was born with the client, and the client was sometimes distant and sometimes close to her. Sometimes she was disgusted and scolded her, but sometimes she was a little warm. The child had never seen the way other mothers and daughters interacted with each other. Naturally, she didn't feel that her mother's treatment of her was inappropriate. Moreover, she didn't feel that there was anything wrong with living in a dirty basement. Her entire life was in this basement. Wang Tiandong said one name after another, but these names were all given a surname, and that was Wang. Wang Tiandong's Wang was a little disgusting. One morning, Ning Shu's stomach finally acted up. It was so painful that Ning Shu's whole body trembled, and his stomach shrank in pain. "Oh my God, it really hurts." In order to give birth faster, Ning Shu had to endure the pain and walk in the basement over and over again. This way, he could give birth faster. Wang Tiandong drove the school bus to send the students to school. He was really worried for the students, sitting in a car driven by a beast every day. He also didn't know if Wang Tiandong imprisoned other girls. Ning Shu took a deep breath, and then another breath. His stomach was in pain. In the future, he would definitely not do the task of giving birth. It was clearly not his child, but he still had to suffer. He fumbled around and prepared everything, such as scissors and towels. When he felt that it was about time, Ning Shu quickly lay on the bed. He only took a deep breath and didn't cry out. This child wasn't big, and the birth was quite smooth. In an instant, something was out of the body, and his whole body felt relaxed. The child cried loudly. Ning Shu sat up and cut the child's umbilical cord. Thinking about it, he had a lot of life experience. It was enough to experience something like this once. Ning Shu used a soft towel to wipe the child's body. Sure enough, it was a girl. Her hair was very sparse and yellow, and she was very thin and weak. After crying for a while, she was tired and fell asleep with her eyes closed. After wrapping the child up and putting her on the bed, Ning Shu threw the placenta into the toilet bowl, and then put a sanitary pad under her body. There was still blood in her stomach. Because of the hormones in his body, Ning Shu, who was not even afraid of death, had an inexplicable feeling of crying in the wind. Postpartum depression was really a scary thing. Chapter 3260. Giving birth was a test for a female. After 10 months of pregnancy, due to the hormones in the mother's body, as well as the worry for the child's future, the mother would often fall into a state of anxiety and crying. Sometimes, she would feel so hopeless that she wished she could hug the child and die. Even though Ning Shu's mind was firm, the exhaustion and frustration from giving birth made him feel like he was better off dead. The basement was filled with the smell of blood. Ning Shu looked at the blushing child and touched her smooth and tender skin. He had to think of a way to settle this child. After all, she had been in pain for so long, a child that had been in her stomach for more than 2 months. When Wang Tiandong came back, he smelled the smell of blood in the basement and was shocked. He thought that the woman in the basement had committed suicide. When he saw Ning Shu lying on the bed, he heaved a sigh of relief. There was a child beside him. Did you give birth? He had only gone to school, but the child had already been unloaded. Is it a boy or a girl? Wang Tiandong directly lifted the swaddling clothes. When he saw that it was a girl, he looked very disappointed. After a while, he said, "A girl is fine too." It was a girl. It was fine to say that he had picked her up. After all, it was more normal to abandon a girl than a boy. Some families insisted on having a boy. The poorer they were, the more they wanted a boy. If they had a girl, it was normal to abandon her. After all, they could not afford to raise her. Wang Tiandong, who had thought it through, smiled, "A girl is good, a girl is good." Wang Tiandong asked Ning Shu, "Are you okay? Prepare something for me to eat. Something light. It's easy to digest." Ning Shu calmly instructed. Okay. Wang Tiandong left the basement, locked the wooden planks and began to prepare food. Ning Shu ate the medicine. It was some medicine for expelling blood clots. He had to recuperate first. Although he had to leave the world after completing the mission, Ning Shu did not want to drag his uncomfortable body to do the mission. The mission was not urgent. He had to finish the confinement first. During this period, he would give Wang Tiandong some fantasies. Wang Tiandong brought in the brown sugar egg water. Ning Shu drank the boiling soup. His body did not have any strength. He said to Wang Tiandong, "I'm very tired now. Make some milk for the child." Ning Shu didn't want to breastfeed, not at all. Wang Tiandong said, "Why don't we feed the child some milk?" He had checked the treatment and it said that the mother's first milk was very good for the child. It could strengthen the child's immunity. The first sip of milk is good for the child. Ning Shu swallowed a mouthful of saliva and almost spat out the egg he had just eaten. Wang Tiandong was really addicted to role-playing. Was he playing the role of a loving father? It was good to get into character. Ning Shu just said, I don't have milk, so I'll make milk powder for the child. It'll have the same effect. Wang Tiandong could only give the child milk powder. The child was also hungry and kept drinking from the bottle. Ning Shu was so tired that he couldn't open his eyes. He said, I'm very tired. Don't wake me up. Wang Tiandong nodded. All right. Wang Tiandong felt that the way they interacted with each other before was very comfortable. At least now, the girl was clean and beautiful. Although her attitude was always arrogant, Wang Tiandong was satisfied. It would be even better if she could be more gentle one day. They would be happy like a family. Wang Tiandong asked Ning Shu tentatively, do you want to go home? Ning Shu couldn't be bothered to deal with Wang Tiandong. Do you dare to let me go back? Wang Tiandong was speechless. He didn't dare. Moreover, the girl's family wouldn't let him go. This was his child's mother. When the time came, they would definitely be forced to separate. Moreover, he had kidnapped a person for so long. He would face legal punishment. Rather than that, he might as well let her stay here. She couldn't go back. Wang Tiandong suddenly wanted to slap his big mouth. Why did he have to talk about this awkward topic? It was something that couldn't be done. If he said it, it would make this woman fantasize. As long as she didn't leave this place, this was Wang Tiandong's bottom line. As long as this woman didn't make a fuss about leaving this place, he would do his best to satisfy her. Ning Shu slept for a while. There was still lochia flowing under his body. It was the residual blood from his body. After sweating all over, Ning Shu was groggy. Moreover, his chest started to swell. It was very painful. Was this breast swelling? This was really awkward. Ning Shu didn't plan to nurse. It was still swollen. After a long time, it would swell until it disappeared. Wang Tiandong held the child and coaxed him. Seeing that Ning Shu was awake, he asked, are you feeling better? Ning Shu said lightly, get me some warm water. I want to wipe my body. Wang Tiandong said, they say that women can't take a shower and wash their hair during confinement. Just bear with it. Bear with it my ass. He was sweating all over. After a long time, the sweat would ferment. The air in the basement wouldn't circulate. One could imagine how strong the smell would be. Ning Shu looked at Wang Tiandong expressionlessly. Wang Tiandong had no choice but to get some warm water for Ning Shu. Ning Shu got up from the bed and went behind the curtain to wash up. Wang Tiandong saw Ning Shu lift the curtain and was a little stunned. Ning Shu glanced at him. Wang Tiandong came back to his senses. He said, I will treat you well. Ning Shu nodded. Okay. When Wang Tiandong saw Ning Shu's response, he immediately swore, really, I will treat you well. Really, as long as you don't leave here, live a good life with me, and give this child a home. As long as you don't leave, we will be a happy family. We will live a good life, Wang Tiandong said. Ning Shu was speechless. Live a good life, a happy family. Wang Tiandong's imagination was too perfect. Wang Tiandong seemed to have thought of something. He said, even if you don't do it for me, you have to do it for the child. As long as you don't want to leave, don't run. Ning Shu nodded and said, I know. Wang Tiandong said happily, have you thought it through? Of course I've thought it through. If I go back now, it'll be awkward. My family definitely won't recognize me, and there will be a lot of rumors. Rather than that, I might as well live here, Ning Shu said lightly. Wang Tiandong was smashed by the sudden joy. He asked, really? Ning Shu looked into his eyes, and his gaze became deeper. He said slowly, word by word, of course it's true. I plan to live a good life with you. Wang Tiandong's eyes became a little dazed. When he came back to his senses, a smile appeared on his honest face. Yes, yes. We will live a good life in the future. Perhaps the two of them had expressed their feelings to each other. Wang Tiandong took good care of Ning Shu, who was in confinement, and took care of the child, acting like a good father. They spent every night in the basement. /BK Chapter 3261. He bathed the child, changed his diapers, and took care of the child. Compared to the situation in the plot where the child was left to fend for himself, the current Wang Tiandong was really a good person. Ning Shu sneered in his heart. He seemed to be moved by Wang Tiandong's appearance. Although he was stubborn, he would occasionally talk to Wang Tiandong about the child's education and future. Wang Tiandong was pleasantly surprised by Ning Shu's change and became more and more attentive. He looked like he was soaking in a honey pot, a happy man. After a month of confinement, Ning Shu even gained weight. The child ate milk powder, which was bought by Wang Tiandong. Similar to the plot, the child now enjoyed being taken care of and cared for. In the plot, the child was so hungry that he cried, and the person who entrusted him would feed him a little. It was by eating and starving that the child tenaciously survived. It was also not easy. After a month of confinement, Wang Tiandong wanted to do that with Ning Shu again. Ning Shu, disgusting. Ning Shu refused directly, saying that his body was not good and he needed to recuperate more. Although Wang Tiandong was unhappy, he could not really force Ning Shu. Otherwise, it would be like before. This woman would scratch and scratch him, shouting and yelling at him. It would really spoil his mood. Every time it came, it was like fighting. Wang Tiandong wanted the kind of carefree feeling where the two of them were connected. Now that their relationship had eased, there was no need to give up halfway because of this. However, he really could not bear it. One night, Wang Tiandong touched Ning Shu's bed and wanted to have an affair. Ning Shu directly used a mental attack and directly knocked him out. Wang Tiandong did not have time to react at all and fainted. When he woke up the next morning, his head was dizzy and painful. When he looked at the bed, there was no sign of the woman and the child. There was no one in the basement. Wang Tiandong was shocked. His head felt like it had been hit by a hammer, dizzy and painful. When he felt that the key was still there, he quickly got up from the bed and saw that the wooden door lock of the basement was open. The wooden door was open. Wang Tiandong was so scared that his legs went soft. He hurriedly went out of the basement and searched everywhere. It was a very old and remote residential area. The conditions and facilities were poor, and the houses were dilapidated. Wang Tiandong searched everywhere but could not find anyone. The woman and the child were gone. Hadn't she already promised him? But now, she was gone. Where did she go? Did he go home or call the police? Wang Tiandong was shocked and angry. Like a headless fly, he frantically searched around. His face was filled with fear. Uncle Ning Shu appeared in front of Wang Tiandong again with the child in his arms. Wang Tiandong almost thought it was an illusion. He rubbed his eyes and quickly ran over, raising his hand to give Ning Shu a big slap. Wang Tiandong, in order to dispel the fear in his heart, decided to use violence to punish Ning Shu. Seeing that someone was going to hit him, Ning Shu reflexively wanted to dodge, but he took the slap. The slap hit Ning Shu's face. The sound was very loud. Wang Tiandong, as if waking up from a dream, looked at Ning Shu blankly. It was true. Great sadness and joy hit Wang Tiandong's heart. His mood was surging like a roller coaster. He quickly pulled Ning Shu into the basement and roared, "Where did you go? Did you want to run away?" Ning Shu said, "I just saw that you didn't close the door. I took the child out to bask in the sun." Children are particularly prone to calcium deficiency. I didn't want to run away. If I wanted to run away, why would I come back? Ning Shu licked the corner of his mouth. There was a bloody taste in the corner of his mouth. It seemed that his mouth was broken. I thought you were lying to me. Ning Shu said, why would I lie to you? Even if it was for the child, I would still stay. Now Wang Tiandong's mood was like a roller coaster at the highest point, up and down. And you actually hit me. You hit me without asking me. Ning Shu's face was cold. Wang Tiandong looked at Ning Shu's cold face and couldn't help but say, well, it's my fault. Why don't you hit me back? Ning Shu's attitude became colder and colder. He didn't pay attention to Wang Tiandong at all. Wang Tiandong instinctively wanted to admit his mistake. He said with some flattery, I'm serious. You can hit me back. Ning Shu snorted, if I hit you back, you will kill me. No, you can do whatever you want. I slapped you before. You can hit me back. Wang Tiandong said and put his face in front of Ning Shu. Ning Shu didn't hit him. Instead, he was as cold as ice. He didn't say a word to Wang Tiandong. He didn't say anything about what he wanted to eat or drink. In order to prevent Ning Shu from stepping out of the basement again, Wang Tiandong was very careful. Until now, he still didn't know what had happened. He wanted to have sex with this woman, but his head hurt. When he woke up, she was gone. The key was with him again. It seemed that he really forgot to lock it. And this woman was treating him like this again. It wasn't easy for their previous relationship to ease a little. Ning Shu was in silent violence with Wang Tiandong. In fact, this was also good. In fact, Ning Shu didn't want to say a word to Wang Tiandong. Wang Tiandong took care of the child and stared at Ning Shu from time to time. Ning Shu ignored him and treated him like air. Wang Tiandong reached the limit of his tolerance. He said impatiently, I asked you to hit me, but you didn't hit me. Who are you showing this dead face for? Ning Shu said coldly, if I really hit you, you will definitely fly into a rage out of humiliation. I won't let you hit me, Wang Tiandong said. Ning Shu didn't hold back this time. He raised his hand and slapped Wang Tiandong's face. A red handprint appeared on his face. Wang Tiandong suddenly felt his head buzzing. He was a little stunned from the hit. Ning Shu immediately asked, what happened to you? You asked me to hit you. Wang Tiandong heard Ning Shu's anxious tone and the anger in his heart disappeared. He said, it's okay. I asked you to hit me. Ning Shu looked faintly at Wang Tiandong's swollen face and asked, are you really okay? Wang Tiandong breathed a sigh of relief. Since she was willing to hit him, it meant that the previous matter was over. It's okay. He didn't expect the woman to be so strong. When Ning Shu saw that Wang Tiandong had been beaten, anger flashed across her face, followed by relief. Then, she heaved a sigh of relief. This matter was over. Ning Shu's attitude towards Wang Tiandong was a little better than before. This made Wang Tiandong feel that the slap was worth it. However, the half of his face that was hit by Ning Shu was swollen for a long time. The bruises didn't disappear for a few days. BK. Chapter 3262. He even had to wear a bandage when he went to work. To outsiders, he said he fell. After that, their relationship gradually developed into Ning Shu. What was there to be unhappy about? Or if Wang Tiandong did something wrong, Ning Shu would immediately put on a cold face and enter Cold War mode. For several days, he was as cold as ice towards Wang Tiandong. No matter what he did, Wang Tiandong gritted his teeth and said, it's all my fault. Why don't you beat me up? Ning Shu, I'm not someone who likes to beat people up. Wang Tiandong took a deep breath and said, I know you're not. Then, Ning Shu gave him a tight slap. Then the Cold War ended, and they returned to their previous relationship. Every time they fought, Ning Shu would give Wang Tiandong slightly better treatment. She would take a step back and let him take a step forward. She would even let him sleep on the bed. Wang Tiandong felt that although it hurt, their relationship eased very well. People were lazy. When they encountered something that could solve everything in one way, they would not think of other ways. And Ning Shu was now cultivating Wang Tiandong's laziness. Every time he encountered something, he would use one method to solve it. A beating was enough. If it still didn't work, Wang Tiandong would beg for another beating. And after the fight, the previous matter was written off and vanished like smoke in thin air. Wang Tiandong would rely on this method to solve the conflict between the two people. Ning Shu was still as cold as ice. After the beating, his face would be much better in the next second, as if he had changed his face. And Wang Tiandong secretly breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that the matter was resolved. And Ning Shu would think of ways to create conflicts. Once there was a conflict, Wang Tiandong would start begging for a beating. After the beating, to prevent Wang Tiandong from rebelling, he would take the initiative to apply a hot towel to his face and pour him water. And Ning Shu looked distressed. Can you not make me beat you like this? I can't bear it. Ning Shu was like a white lotus flower. Don't be like this. Don't make me beat you. I really don't want to beat you. Every time he hit Wang Tiandong, his face would say, I don't want to hit you. My heart hurts. However, if Wang Tiandong did not allow Ning Shu to fight, Ning Shu would return to his ice-cold appearance. Wang Tiandong couldn't find any other way, so he could only beg for a beating. Ning Shu, on the other hand, wouldn't directly beat Wang Tiandong up. Instead, she showed a very reluctant and resistant expression. Then, he unwillingly beat Wang Tiandong with all his might. Of course, sometimes when Wang Tiandong was hurt and wanted to fight back, Ning Shu directly used his spiritual force to stun Wang Tiandong. Now, he could only use his mental strength. He couldn't use any other abilities. When Wang Tiandong woke up, Ning Shu said, Why do you always faint? You should go to the hospital to see if there's anything wrong with your body. Wang Tiandong was also puzzled. His head hurt so much. Maybe there really was something wrong with his head. He hurried to the hospital for a checkup, but there were no results. In this cycle of cold and hot, Ning Shu and Wang Tiandong formed a strange way of getting along. And Wang Tiandong was already used to this method, which could quickly solve the conflict between the two. The only thing Wang Tiandong would not let Ning Shu hit was his face. After all, it was easy to arouse suspicion with injuries every day. He fell so frequently, and even fell on his face. Ning Shu never mentioned going back again. It seemed that he really wanted to stay and live a good life with Wang Tiandong. This made Wang Tiandong feel that the physical pain he suffered was worth it. Although it hurt, there was a gain. The effort was rewarded, and Wang Tiandong's brain accepted this solution. Rather than a solution, it was better to call it a punishment mechanism. This punishment mechanism was too convenient, and it left a deep impression. In the future, when Wang Tiandong faced Ning Shu, his brain would immediately activate this mechanism. As long as there was a problem in the relationship between the two people, this solution would first appear in his brain. And his brain would also numb Wang Tiandong. Although it would hurt, there would be a reward. So Wang Tiandong often shouted in his heart, hit me quickly. After hitting him, the matter was over. Ning Shu only gave a little benefit and sweetness. Previously, he was expressionless, occasionally smiling, and squeezing him on the bed. Other than that, he would not let him do anything. Although Wang Tiandong had a solution, it was still very painful to be hit. So he was worried that Ning Shu would be angry, and if she was angry, he would be beaten. In the repeated alternating between cold and hot, Wang Tiandong's brain had already been shaped, and he already had a fixed way of thinking. He was originally a dull person, and the boldest thing he did in his life was kidnapping the person who entrusted him. Ning Shu's actions were to show Wang Tiandong another way, a way to solve the conflict between the two people. Other than not letting Ning Shu out of the basement, Wang Tiandong was getting better and better to Ning Shu, and his bottom line was getting lower and lower. It was estimated that in the near future, Ning Shu might be allowed to leave the basement. However, Ning Shu leaving the basement was related to Wang Tiandong's life. In order to save his own life, it was very likely that he would be exposed. This should be Wang Tiandong's bottom line that could not be crossed. However, every time Wang Tiandong begged Ning Shu to hit him, Ning Shu would look like a white lotus and then hit him very hard. After hitting him, he would ask about Wang Tiandong's well-being. The child changed day by day. His skin was still red before, but now it was white and tender, and he had lost weight. From the looks of it, he should be a beauty when he grows up. It was not known if he could grow up. Now was not the time to leave. Wang Tiandong took care of the child every day, and it seemed that he had not established a deep relationship. When a deep relationship was established, it would be extremely painful to cut it off. Without investing time, money, and feelings, it did not matter whether the child was there or not. However, if too much money was invested and the child suddenly disappeared, that would be called pain and unwillingness. Moreover, what was wrong with letting the child be taken care of by his father? He could not be tortured like in the plot, and he did not know how to survive. He was a completely mentally deformed child. However, this child's whereabouts really gave Ning Shu a headache. After she left, this child would have no parents. Moreover, Ning Shu would not allow this child to live with Wang Tiandong. Before leaving, he had to deal with Wang Tiandong. Was he really going to give him to the client's family? Directly at the door. If they directly sent him to the police station and no one adopted him, he would be directly sent to the orphanage. Ning Shu asked through the system, ask the client again if he will come back. This child really made people feel numb. Sure enough, it was inconvenient to have concerns, and he was full of worries. /BK Chapter 3263. If she was alone, it would be much easier to complete the mission, but there was no guarantee that the client would not go back on her word. What if she came back? On the phone, if she came back, there was no need to worry about the child. However, if she came back, the client's identity would also be a problem. After confirming her return, Ning Shu still had to help the client get an identity. Her current identity was already dead, and there was no such person in the world anymore. He did not want her to suddenly come back and catch him off guard. It was better to ask again and again. Right now, she was dealing with Wang Tiandong like a carrot and a stick. Step by step, she would be able to tame Wang Tiandong sooner or later. If she suddenly disappeared after taming, Wang Tiandong would be at a loss and very painful. After getting used to a pattern, it would be painful and difficult to re-establish a new pattern. Just like the animals in the circus, they were very pitiful, but once they left the circus, these animals would also die. Because they left the circus, these animals could not hunt, could not survive, and only knew how to juggle. Although it was painful, they could only live in the circus. Ning Shu wanted Wang Tiandong to get used to this pattern, and then suddenly leave. Ning Shu said to the system, help me confirm it again, ask clearly, there is a way to complete the mission if she comes back, and there is a way to complete the mission if she doesn't come back. The system said, okay. After a while, it said, she won't come back. Ning Shu said, are you sure? You can't change it after you confirm it. The system said, she said she won't go back, she can't face the child, and her life is already broken, there is no need to go back. Such a broken life, without a family, and with a child to live, such a life was hopeless with no end in sight. Even if she could live a bright future, it would be 10,000 times more difficult than a normal person's success. Why should she live such a life? Starting over was a better choice. Since you've asked clearly, that's good. Ning Shu was relieved, then this mission was completed and he could leave directly, there was no need to care about what happened after. It was the child that needed to be dealt with properly. Although Wang Tiandong looked like a loving father now, Ning Shu couldn't leave this child to Wang Tiandong at all. Losing two things was too painful. His fantasy of a happy family fell apart in an instant. Physical injury was not a problem, it seemed that Wang Tiandong could tolerate it. In order to avoid being beaten up, he would try his best to satisfy Ning Shu. For example, some small tasks, such as serving tea and pouring water, were done very smoothly. He did everything he was told to do, except for asking Ning Shu to leave the basement. Ning Shu didn't want to leave now. If she wanted to leave, she could do it any time. He let Wang Tiandong carefully put away the key and kept it close to his body. Ning Wang Tiandong, Ning Ning Shu, and Wang Tiandong, Wang Tiandong, and Wang Tiandong, Wang Tiandong, Wang Tiandong. Wang 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 to Wang 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 Wang. Although it was in the basement, he would make it very clean and decorate the basement with some small decorations. Wang Tiandong said that the air in the basement was not good, so he spent some money to get a ventilation duct, which could make the air in the basement much better. Wang Tiandong was glad that she did not insist on leaving the basement, or he would not know what to do. If she was not satisfied, she would be angry. Wang Tiandong felt happy in his heart. Sure enough, she was still thinking about him, or she would have said that she wanted to leave the basement. She must know that he was in a difficult position. Wang Tiandong fell into his fantasy land touched by his own love. Ning Shu almost did not take care of the child, everything was taken care of by Wang Tiandong. He bathed the child, fed milk powder, and when the child cried and felt uncomfortable, he held him in his arms and coaxed him. Holding the child, Wang Tiandong felt that the whole world was in his arms. He truly felt that this was his child, his bloodline, his descendant. He had a child of his own. Moreover, he had a child with the girl he liked. Now in Wang Tiandong's heart, Ning Shu's figure was deeply engraved in his heart. Even if Ning Shu hit him, he would find a reason to exonerate Ning Shu. The child was taken care of carefully. Now that he had grown up, he would occasionally smile at people. He had no teeth, and his pink gums were exposed. He looked quite cute. But Ning Shu was very worried. How should he deal with this child? If he stayed in this world, his life would not be good. How worrying. Sending him to an orphanage was not necessarily good for the child's life. The children living in the orphanage were not necessarily happy. There was no need to think about who the father of this child was. She was just a sperm provided by the father. Let's try to send her to the client's home first, and then plan for the rest. When the child was 3 months old, Ning Shu used his spiritual power to stun Wang Tiandong, opened the wooden lock, and held the child. According to the address provided in the plot, he found the client's home. Ning Shu stood at the gate of the community, avoided people, and went to the client's door. He rang the doorbell, then put the child at the door. He hid at the stairs and looked around. The door opened. It was the client's mother. This woman looked much older than in the plot. Probably the client's disappearance had taken a lot of life away from this family. A half-grown child had disappeared just like that. There had been no news for so many years. It would be strange if she was not upset. Even a pet would be sad, let alone her own child. The woman opened the door and saw the child. She was stunned for a moment. She looked around and did not dare to pick up the child. A child suddenly appeared at the door. If she picked it up, someone would come out later and say that they were abducting a child. The child spat out saliva. It was white and tender, with long eyelashes. It was so cute. But she did not dare to pick it up. She squatted down to look at the child's gender. It was a girl. It was better to call the police. She dialed the police number with her cell phone. Ning Shu, who was hiding at the corner of the stairs, lowered his hat, rushed down the stairs, picked up the child, and ran away. Sure enough, no one dared to rashly adopt a child who fell from the sky. Especially in a country with perfect laws, and a big city, it was impossible to be like a small place. If a child was suddenly adopted, the neighbors would also be suspicious. Hey! Seeing the child being taken away, the woman hurried to chase. What was the situation? Someone stole a child/BK. Chapter 3264. Ning Shu ran away and then went home with the child. Wang Tiandong was still in a coma. Ning Shu locked the door of the basement and put the child on the bed. When Wang Tiandong woke up, he had a headache. He rubbed his head and asked, "What time is it now? Why did I faint again?" Ning Shu was upset because he didn't know how to deal with the child. He said angrily, "How would I know what time it is? Why do you faint? You'd better go to the hospital to see if you have any terminal illness." Although Ning Shu's tone was not good and even very rude, Wang Tiandong was not angry at all. He said, "I should go to the hospital." His head hurt and he fainted. When he woke up, his whole body was not good. His head felt like it had been split by an axe. Was there a tumor in his head that pressed on the blood vessels in his brain? Was that why his head hurt so much? Forget it. I won't go to work today. I'll take a leave and go to the hospital. Ning Shu just said, "Okay." Wang Tiandong reached out and touched the child's face. He said, "Our daughter is so beautiful. Many boys will like her in the future." Ning Shu was not in a good mood. He said directly, "Aren't you going to the hospital? Go now." Wang Tiandong was not angry. He changed his clothes and went to the hospital. As soon as Wang Tiandong left, Ning Shu directly pulled a long face and was expressionless. She held her chin and looked at the child who spat. Was there only one way left, which was to send the child to the orphanage? This was really a difficult problem to solve. To be honest, Ning Shu was not willing to send the child to the orphanage. After all, she gave birth to the child. It was rare for her to have a motherly instinct, but she couldn't show it. Wang Tiandong went to the hospital to check his brain. The doctor said that there was nothing wrong with his brain. Wang Tiandong breathed a sigh of relief and felt puzzled. If there was nothing wrong with his brain, why did he keep fainting? And his head hurt so much. Of course, Wang Tiandong wouldn't suspect Ning Shu. After all, Ning Shu was just an ordinary woman. She didn't have any superpowers. If she really had superpowers, she would have run away a long time ago. During this period of time, Ning Shu increased the training of Wang Tiandong. He would often find fault with him, but of course, he did not say that he wanted to leave. This was Wang Tiandong's bottom line. It was a matter of life and death. In the face of death, living creatures would erupt with a powerful rebound force. Therefore, Ning Shu would not touch Wang Tiandong's bottom line, but in other aspects, he would step on Wang Tiandong's bottom line lower and lower. It had been 5 months, but Ning Shu still hadn't dealt with the child. The child's perception of the things around him was getting better and better. Ning Shu thought for a moment and tapped on the black hole to summon Zhu Jun. The golden skeleton appeared in the basement. Zhu Jun sized up Ning Shu. "You have a body now." "No, it's just for the time being. In the future, I'll have all kinds of bodies, male and female, big and small." Ning Shu said, "There's no way to deal with this child. Send him to 9 Palace Mountain. Of course, it would be impossible to send a mature child to 9 Palace Mountain. That would be equivalent to transmigration. However, the current child did not have any special understanding of things. He was a pure soul. A person's understanding of things was accumulated over time. Zhu Jun asked, "What's wrong with this child?" Ning Shu said, "He's mine." Zhu Jun. "You gave birth." Ning Shu. "Don't worry about these details." Zhu Jun said, "Who will take care of him if he's sent to 9 Palace Mountain? It's not good to find someone to take care of him." Ning Shu had a headache. "I can't find someone to take care of him. He's already given birth. What else can I do? This child is in my hands." Fortunately, it was a girl. Zhu Jun, "It's not good to give him to the child's father. To be honest, I don't really understand what you're doing now. I'm fulfilling someone's wish. Do you remember the studio that died prematurely? This is what I'm doing now." Zhu Jun. "Is it a mission to give birth to a child?" Ning Shu, "Anyway, it's a long story. Just take the child away." It had been long enough. 1 month was enough for him to form a habit. She had given Wang Tiandong enough hints. "Zhu Jun, I can take him away. The problem is where to and who will take care of him. It's not easy to raise a child. More than 10 years. Take him away first. We'll talk about it after my mission is over. Go to the second level of 9 Palace Mountain." Ning Shu said. Living people could not survive in the world of reincarnation. "Zhu Jun, since he's not your child, why do you care so much? Maternal instincts?" Ning Shu nodded. "Yes, I've always been so full of maternal instincts." Zhu Jun did not want to talk anymore. He picked up the child. The child in his arms opened his eyes. Looking at the scary skull, he began to giggle. He did not feel fear at all. He doesn't even have teeth. What's there to laugh about? Zhu Jun carried the child into the black hole. Ning Shu stopped him and asked him to take away all the baby products. How could he raise a child without baby products? Zhu Jun turned around and carried the things away. With one hand holding the child, he entered the black hole. Ning Shu stretched lazily. It was time to leave this place. Staying in such a small and depressing place made people feel mentally unhealthy. It was even more depressing than being in prison. Ning Shu left the basement. When Wang Tiandong came back, he saw that the wooden boards of the basement were open. When he entered, he saw that the basement was empty. Even the crib was gone. What was going on? For a moment, Wang Tiandong felt as if his brain had been smashed by a huge hammer. His soul left his body and returned to the 9 heavens. Did they really leave? Even the crib was gone. All the baby products were gone. It was as if all traces of the child had been erased. Wang Tiandong had a bad feeling. He had a feeling that the mother and daughter would not come back. However, he tried his best to deny it. Wang Tiandong was terrified. He felt as if he had been abandoned by the whole world. He was so terrified that he did not know what to do. He saw the road ahead. He was at a loss. He felt as if he could not live anymore. He came out of the basement and looked around the neighborhood. His face was full of fear. Not only was he afraid that his actions would be discovered, but he was also afraid that he would be abandoned. He had been used to a lifestyle. If he suddenly had to change, he would feel fear and despair. In fact, Wang Tiandong's spirit relied on Ning Shu to live. Without Ning Shu, Wang Tiandong would have no spiritual support. More than half a year was enough for Wang Tiandong's spirit to relax. It was the feeling of a pet relying on its master. Although Wang Tiandong could drive and earn some money to survive, Wang Tiandong without a spiritual support was not someone who could earn money to support himself. Spiritual despair was like a poison. The longer it lasted, the more poisonous it became. /BK You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.